I have always been here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, geeks, nerds, ambassadors, Poindexters everywhere, and welcome to the Ambassadorial Wing and another Sunday night Ambassadorial Editorial. And glad to be back. It has been a few days since I streamed. It's been a long week. We're wrapping up another weekend and wanted to bring you all another editorial. And this is a topic I have visited off and on over the last few years since I've been doing this thing called YouTube. But we've had some developments in terms of the Marvel Universe, and now that Disney owns Fox Studios, they actually own the rights to both X-Men and the Fantastic Four. But I wanted to spend some time this evening and talk about a topic that I absolutely positively love. It's by far one of my favorite aspects of the Marvel Universe, and that is, of course, X-Men. And as always, for those of you that are tuning in tonight, I hope you all enjoy the stream. Make sure that you hit that like button, smash the ever loving crap out of that thing, go into a berserker rage, just like our good mutant Canadian from the north, Logan himself, and just absolutely annihilate that like button. And of course, as always, I have dropped the link in the chat. So if you want to join me this evening as we discuss all things X-Men, the link is there. By all means, use it. And tonight, I have got an alum of the Ambassadorial Wing. He has been a longtime friend. I consider him a fellow geek, a fellow ambassador, and a very good friend. The one and the only MB Grandpa Geek. Geek, good to see you, man.
Good to be here, buddy.
Likewise. So, that all being said, folks, we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump right into things here because I don't believe in staying on a bunch of ceremony. I do a little ceremony, but not a whole bunch. But before we get into the main topic of the evening, X-Men, we have gotten another episode of What If, and I thought we'd spend a little time, you and me, Geek, and discuss the newest episode of What If. What if T'Challa was a Star-Lord? And to just kind of give my initial thoughts, once again, the Marvel Studios and the people in charge of the What If series, they have crafted a very good story. The animation, as I have come to expect with the first episode, now this episode, is right on the mark, and it's beautiful. It's vibrant. It's at some points hysterical, and by no means dull. And it also presents a very interesting question: what if T'Challa was Star-Lord and a member of the Ravagers? So, Geek, your thoughts, my friend?
Well, it was interesting. I'm going to tell you this. I was very impressed with the actor, Chad Boseman, to hide his illness and to keep that private because I have mad respect for him. He didn't want that to be out there. He worked on being who he was. He didn't want that. And I'm impressed. Uh, his movies I've seen, he's always very, very serious. So to hear Chad Boseman have comical notes throughout that episode, I was like, wow, I did not, because it's acting, but actors have ranges. We don't know always their range, and sometimes we say, this isn't your area of acting. This isn't his humor in that episode. If Chad Boseman was still alive now, he would have been, if people had seen that and he was still alive, there is comedy gold in that because I really found the way he did it with his tone, his accent, and everything. I found it just enjoyable. I I mean, he was funny. I was like, I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, this if he had been, like I said, if he had still was alive now and people
Mhm.
saw this, there'd be comedy skit. This guy would be on I'd be like, put him on SNL and bring SNL back on the map.
Well, here's the funny thing. He actually did do an episode of SNL right around the time that Black Panther was released. I think it was actually the same year. Um, they did a short skit of I think it was Celebrity Family Feud or Celebrity Jeopardy, or no, it was Black Jeopardy. That was what they did, and he was actually a contestant. He was actually kind of dressed the same way that he was in Black Panther. But yeah, well, the interesting thing with Chadwick Boseman is he was known for his more dramatic acting capability, but at the same time, his his repertoire as an actor did allow him to do, I would say, very much somewhat dry humor, but at the same time, he could be legitimately funny if he wanted to. And I want to send a shout to the chat. Brightest day, Brightest, good to see you. Hope you're having a great Sunday, and thank you for
Hey,
being here
Brett.
tonight. So, but yeah, go ahead,
Can
geek.
I say something real quick? Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you. Uh, like I'm saying, I really, when I saw this episode, and I've seen a lot of people bitch and mope and complain about this episode, I'm like, did you see the same episode I did? Did you see the same actor I did? He was voice acting, which
Mhm.
we all know is harder than physical acting. And his comedy, his humor it surprised me so much that I was like, man, I'm not going to lie. I kind of would have liked him as Star Lord. I
Yeah,
would
and
not have minded that.
and here's the interesting thing. This is what the What If series is good at, and what it's meant for, is to ponder the questions of how one change in a person's story or in their trajectory of their life can change so many others. And for those of you who know, and for many of you who may not know, Chadwick Boseman actually was an ordained pastor. I'm not sure of what denomination he was, but I think this episode very much embodies, in a lot of ways, that whole concept of the Christian ideal of trying to be a person that tries to be a positive force in the world around you. And for myself, and I know for you, Geek, both of us being Christians as well, from different denominational backgrounds and so on. But the thing is, that part doesn't really matter. What Star Lord, or T'Challa, or Chacha, as Nebula calls him, what happens is he is obviously abducted by the Ravengers by mistake, but his charisma, his personality, his ability to debate, his all of the better parts of his character were able to take the Ravengers and take various characters that we felt would not have ever been able to be, I don't want to say manipulated because that's not the right word, but he was able to show them their better nature and say, look, you have done this all your life, but here is what you could do with your abilities and your partnerships and everything that you have done throughout your lifetime up until this point. And he was able to take the Ravengers and turn them essentially into, as Yandu calls him, Robin Leach and his merry men, or Robin Hood and his merry men. And I have to admit,
I love that.
I really liked the fact that they were once again able to get a lot of the actors who played their original parts to come back. You had the one gentleman who played Korath, I think it was, that was one of the leaders of the Ronan's army. I can't remember the name of them off the top of my head, but they were able to get that actor to come back. They also got Michael Rooker to come back. They had Chadwick Boseman. They had Karen Gilliam. They had Josh Brolin, for heaven's sakes, playing a different version of Thanos. And obviously, you had Carrie Coon, who played Proxima Midnight, one of the members of the Black Guard. But, honestly, kind of getting back to the point I was making a minute or two ago, T'Challa's all the aspects of his personality were able to convince these people who were some of the worst people you could think of. I mean, you think about Thanos, who he was, you think about the Ravagers, who they were, and so on. And he was able to transform villains into heroes.
Ambassador,
And
I'm sorry, but I gotta say this. I'm chomping at the bit. This is the whole nature versus nurture.
It is.
Because think about it. Peter Quill, look at his origin and his upbringing. Now think about T'Challa's upbringing until he was abducted. We are talking about the nurture of two very different people into very different cultures. Yes.
That's true.
And T'Challa was, whereas Peter was somewhat abused, somewhat neglected, somewhat, he had all those flaws. T'Challa was very much loved, very much educated, very much schooled. So when he's up there, he's not necessarily as afraid as Quill would be, because he is prepared, at least at some point, for this, because he knows what is order. Do you get where I'm going there?
Yes, I know exactly. Well, even the Watcher says it. And again, Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher.
Oh,
is it the nature of the person, or the nature of your world that shapes you into the person you are going to be? And in a lot of ways, T'Challa, he was the crown prince of Wakanda, so he had a first-rate education. He had everything he could possibly ask for. Combat skills, obviously, and of course, he probably picked up some combat training from Yondu and them as well.
He was also technologically advanced, because look at Wakanda. So if he was picked up by them, he was probably not as surprised as Peter Quill would have been.
And you see that in the scene where he goes outside of the shield that's around, or the cloaking shield that surrounds Wakanda, and when the Mandela, or it was originally the Milano, but he changed his name to the Mandela before Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela, absolutely.
Which I think was somebody else had, I think it was another stream I had listened to, have commented on that fact. I thought that was very appropriate, because here's the thing about Mandela. He was also a unifier. He was a world changer. He was a person that believed in building bridges and building relationships. Yes.
He was a hero.
Yeah.
He was a hero. There's no other way to say. You know what? You can sum it all up. Nelson Mandela, for everything he did, hero, hands down.
Yes. And that's the one thing I really appreciated about this episode, is it really goes to show how one person can truly transform the world around them. And that is a story I think we all can get behind, and it's a story we all can relate to, because we all want to have an impact in our world, the world around us, and the lives of the people that are around us. And what this episode of What If very, very well does is shows how one person's actions can, both for good and for bad, because if you think about it, when Thanos said, "When I went straight," the Collector, who was once again voiced by Benicio del Toro. And I have to admit, Del Toro, he slipped right back into that role like a hand into a glove. It was he did such a great job. And whereas the original collector was a little more mercurial and mischievous and a little more goofy, this this collector was imposing. He was intimidating, but he still had that somewhat goofy and silly aspect to his character, which I did appreciate. And with Thanos no longer going on his crusade and instead working within a much better system, although he says, well, my plan still has its merits. I'll still argue and debate those merits till you're
Yeah,
purple
I
in the
did
face.
like that. I actually very much
Yeah.
enjoyed that. But
Yeah.
here's the thing, Ambassador. Here's the biggest thing I get so annoyed with what I've seen is they're talking about, oh, we're race swapping now or we're gender swapping. No, this is what if. It's what if. That is the whole point of it. And it was a very good story. And I feel like that some people in our communities are now just painting things angrily because they belong to a certain IP.
Or a certain group or a certain
Yes.
nuisance. Sorry,
Yeah,
that did
and
that
I'm
loud.
sorry, I'm not going to do that. When I saw this episode,
Mhm.
it took me a few days. I got to it a little later. I saw some people say some very disgusting things, and then when I saw it, I was like, I enjoyed it. I was like, this is just as good as the first episode, if not
Well,
better.
and unfortunately, some people they are pigeonholed both either willingly or unwillingly into a particular frame of mind, and or they're playing a part or whatever the case may be. I myself, I don't play a part. I am who I am. I am who you see in front of in front of this camera. As I've said before, the ambassador is the same person off camera that he is on. And I watched this episode and I said, no, I enjoyed this. I did. And it was, I understood the story they were trying to tell. I understood the dynamic that was being crafted. And I understand I understand the concept of what if. This is a hypothetical. It's not them simply just swapping things in and out for the sake of swapping it out. But unfortunately, some people have a narrative that that they have to continually feed into instead of just giving things an honest critique.
You
And
see,
go ahead, geek,
oh,
please.
you see, What If was one of my absolute favorite comics growing up. You see, I
Hmm.
try to explain to my son. He tries to say, "Well, you're a comic book fan." I said, "No, son. Yes, I'm a fan of comics, but only of certain comics. I've never said I'm an overall comic fan. And I've had my flavors, X Men
Hmm.
being one, this kind of stuff being one. I've been trying to explain that to my son to say, hey,
Hmm.
I'm not the expert in everything,
Yeah.
but
Well, nobody's the expert in absolutely everything. I mean, X Men is just happens to be one part of the Marvel universe that I absolutely love, and that I read.
yes,
I read every title underneath the banner of that particular part of the Marvel universe, and I also read What If. Now I didn't read every single
yes,
issue. I would pick up the issues that interested me and so on, and I enjoyed them, but I didn't consume all of the What If stories that they did because some I was like, okay. I took a look at the cover and I'd be like, okay, yeah, this looks interesting. I'll get this issue. I'd see another one. I'd be like, that's not really me, so I'm gonna pass on it. But
what
yeah, go ahead.
what worked for me was it was kind of twofold sometimes. It was
Mhm.
I get a what if alternative story, and then I would get the snippet of what originally happened. And sometimes that was a story that at the time, back when you and I were that age, you couldn't just get your hands on that comic book. So it was kind of a twofold. Sometimes you get at least a little bit. Like
Hmm.
there was an issue where what if Wolverine and the Dark Phoenix were together versus Cyclops?
Hmm.
And at that time, I couldn't get my hands on the Dark Phoenix saga. I mean, it was the 90s. That was like the unicorn for God's sakes.
Yeah, because back in those days, you didn't have all the trade paperbacks that you do now that are that have
Oh,
every
you did
single
not.
part of a particular story. And you know, I wish I had never got rid of my comics, but at the same time, I would have had to lug them everywhere, and I don't know where I would have kept them and everything. And so it is what it is. I've been fortunate enough. I've been able to collect some of the trade paperbacks and everything of the ones of the cross of the X-Men crossovers and some other crossovers I really enjoyed and so on. But you know, if you look at what if and what they're trying to do with this series, it's an anthology.
Yes.
It's not a single storyline. That's not the way it's crafted or and everything. There is sort of an overarching theme with the Watcher presenting the different stories, and that's how it was
And
always done in the comics.
exactly, Ambassador. I'm gonna tell you the first thing I wanted to do. I said when I heard about What If, I was like, I want to hear the Watcher narrate. And
Yeah.
when the Watcher is the beginning and the end of that
Hmm.
first episode with Captain Carter, which
Hmm.
I absolutely freaking enjoyed,
Same
found
here.
it fantastic.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. These what ifs, the two we've gotten so far, in my opinion, qualify on an animation level of classic Twilight Zone. And yes, I'm putting them that high.
And hey, I won't say that that perspective is wrong. I would say the stories that they are telling are both engaging and they're also thought provoking because if you look at the story of Captain Carter, it's telling the story of how a woman got the opportunity to serve her country or the world in World War II. And it also tells how Steve Rogers got to play his part and so on as well and everything, even though he didn't get the super soldier serum like in the original timeline. With what if T'Challa was Star Lord? You have him as a single person come in to the broader universe, and unlike Peter Quill, who no one knows, that initial reaction by Korath there on Morag when he's getting the Power Stone, the Power Infinity Stone, and everybody knows him, everybody respects him because of his reputation, because of what he's been able to do. And even Yondu is like, "Hey, you're my kid." He's like, "You've got a father out there. I respect that fact." And that's one of the interactions that I really liked towards the end of the episode when they go back to Earth, and T'Challa is like, this is my family, and this is the family I made out there in the star among the stars." And both families are able to get along, even though you have that one exchange between um the leader of the Dormalage, Okoye, and Thanos, when he's like, "Well, here's my presentation on why my plan could have worked," and she says, "Well, it's still genocide." And he's like, Yes and no,"
Yeah,
but the
I actually laughed. I'm sorry,
I
but I
did
laughed.
too. No. Well, that's the thing.
I laughed.
It's a running gag, and
It was funny. But what the interesting thing is, people were saying, "Oh, Captain Carter was a Marisu because she was better than Captain America." Here's why I said they were wrong. She was a trained agent
Yep.
and officer,
Yep. In the
whereas Ed had been in service for quite a long time
hmm
and was not, disabled. You have, while Steve Rogers is absolutely a patriot and trying his best, he still has physical limitations. And it's not until he gets the serum that, he's able to use those skills he's learned. She had those skills. She was able to enhance those skills. And yes, when she giggled and laughed, yes, that is what a woman would do maybe when she finds out she has a talent she didn't know. I mean, that's not sexist. That's just realism.
Well, and the other and the same is true with T'Challa. His
Exactly.
his upbringing and everything else that he was and he had become as a young man and as a young kid even allowed him to be a positive influence on the people around him, human or alien otherwise, either way. And if you think about it, humans had not gone out into the stars yet, not even close yet. So for a human to be out there among the stars, somebody from Earth, and even though he was from Wakanda, obviously, he grew a very strong reputation, and it even reached the ears of Thanos, the Mad Titan. And the Mad Titan sat down and they talked to one another rather than throwing punches at one another. And T'Challa was able to show Thanos a better way. And in the long run, everybody was the better for it. And I want to say to the chat, games, movies, and comics are us. Good to see you, man, and thank you for being here tonight. And hope you
Hey,
enjoy the
James,
stream.
good to see you, bud.
We're just wrapping up our. We're going to be wrapping up our review of What If, and then we're going to move into the main topic of the evening, X-Men. But uh, I don't know about that games. I mean, we don't know for sure yet. So we'll just have to wait and see. As most of you know, I'm more of a pragmatist. I believe in seeing what happens rather than trying to prognosticate what could happen. But I will say I am excited for um, the X-Men to be airing the MCU. But Geek, any final thoughts on the this episode of What If before we do move into the main topic of the night?
I'm going to say this. Honestly, I've
Mm-hmm,
seen so much negativity about the first two episodes,
mm-hmm,
and I find the negativity fake. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be very, very honest. I've seen so many bigger channels that
mm-hmm.
I think are just making angry videos to make angry videos. And I think they're fake because there was nothing wrong with either of those two episodes. I mean, okay, sorry, let me rephrase that. Was there certain things wrong? Sure, there's always some wrong. But overall, it wasn't about the gender swap, it wasn't about the race swap, because that, if you're going off that, you don't understand what if was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm gonna say, because I, as a big fan of What If, always loved it. So many so many great things, so many great possibilities. And it was, kind of the, like I said, the what if. I mean, the MCU is technically a what if now. I
Yeah,
mean,
in a lot of ways,
yeah.
yes. Because if you look at what they, and this will be the last word on it before we move to the main topic. If you look at what they did with Loki and with WandaVision, Loki especially is a big what if. What if Loki got plucked, had grabbed? I mean, think about it. And in that one particular instant, you had the beginning of a very interesting what if story. And that's what the Loki series was all about. What if Loki got his hands on the Tesseract, escaped from from the Avengers, and he went on this wild and crazy adventure? That's what Loki was in a lot of ways, if you think about it. They just
I
happened
actually
to
enjoyed that. That was my favorite so far.
it's right up there for me. I mean, of the three series so far, the top one for me, and it's a close first and second, is WandaVision, and then Loki, and then Falcon and Winter Soldier. But I may have to, depending on how What If goes, I may have to squeeze that in there into the third spot and become.
Oh, I see where you're going. Um, Ambassador, check out my video sometime about what I said about WandaVision,
Mm-hmm,
because I took a very different view than what a lot of people did. I
mm-hmm.
actually went into her psyche, her mental health, because
Yeah.
whereas a lot of people were bitching, moping, and complaining about her, I, as someone who's got PTSD, wife
Mm-hmm.
has PTSD, understands it. It was like I don't. I would hear people complain. I'm like, I don't think you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing, because I understood why Wanda did what she did. I may
Mm-hmm.
not agree with it, but
Yes.
I understood why Rambo understood it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, and another
Oh,
familiar face to the chat, Tim Talks. Tim, good to see you, man. Hope you're having a great night. We're just finishing up our little review of the newest episode of What If, and now we're going to move into the main topic of the evening, X-Men. And to kind of kick off this discussion, I will tell you all, with no undue bias, the X-Men universe within the Marvel universe is by far one of my favorite aspects the Marvel universe. The characters, the storylines, it's rich, it's full, it's decades long, and there's so much to discuss. That's why I wanted to start a little earlier than I planned on, and because there's a lot within the X-Men universe to discuss. And the fact now that we are on the precipice of, I think within the next couple of years, we're going to be seeing the X-Men coming into the MCU itself. I am by no means unenthusiastic. I am very enthusiastic for this prospect. And tonight, we're going to continue the stream. We're going to be talking about all things X-Men, the comics, our favorite storylines, the movies, most definitely the animated series that they've done, both with the 90s animated series and X-Men Evolution. So, Geek, to quote one of my all-time favorite movies, I'm sure it's one of yours. You are my guest. I am your host. What would you like to do? Where would you like to begin with X-Men?
oh my gosh. Well, okay, I'll start with my introduction into X-Men.
Sure.
1990s, Jim Lee's X-Men. That is my X-Men. And now I had been buying comics long before that, but comics at that time were, for a lot of people who don't know, were actually readily available. You could buy them at a gas station, you could buy them at a newsstand, you could buy them at a grocery store. You remember those days? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you'd buy these things and you'd read them, but uh X-Men was one of those ones that got me. And this is why I say I don't call myself a comic book fan. I call myself a comic book fan of certain things. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because I'll tell you what, my favorite C list character, Silver Surfer. Loved everything Silver Surfer. Everything.
Same.
Um, but Spider-Man, X-Men,
Those are
Batman, Superman,
mm-hmm.
I
The
was
big
going
ones.
towards I was go well, no, I was going towards the storylines, and
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have internet or anything to tell us what was the new thing, what was hot or nothing. We went into the comic store, we saw the titles, we looked at the covers, and everybody says don't judge a book by its cover. It's total bullshit. That's exactly how we did it.
Yes.
And Jim Lee. with his
Mm-hmm.
X-Men art just gravitated me towards, and the
When they
stories were just, I mean, I saw Wolverine get his, I mean, I'm telling you what, you talk about X-Men, everybody wants to do the Dark Phoenix saga. They've done it twice now. Fuck the Dark Phoenix saga, pardon me. But you know what I want to see? I want to see the Fatal Attraction where
mm-hmm.
Magneto rips out Logan's animanium, and then after that, Professor X lobotomizes Magneto.
Mm-hmm.
That was a freaking story.
And I'm gonna bring up something here because I know this
Sorry,
cover.
I got a little
No, no,
passionate
no,
there.
no, dude. Hey, and I understand the passion. I've been there. I know. I understand how it feels. This is the cover right here.
Oh, yes. Frick, I used to have that comic.
I
I
did too.
used to have that comic.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
It
Lee
is.
did such a great. Lee did such a great job. He really did. I mean, you look at the colors, you look at the design, you look at what's the story tells everything. And this was the big '90s reboot for X-Men. And of course, they got Jim Lee to do got him to do the art for the first, like, I think like 10 issues or whatever, and somebody else, or he continued on. But yeah, for me, my introduction to X-Men, um, it was the comics, and then it was the '90s animated series. And
Mm,
when Fox Kids or FX Kids
yeah, no, it
announced
was
that they were
Fox
gonna
Kids. It was Fox
Fox
Kids.
Kid when every weekday after school I
Na,
would
na,
get home.
na,
Dun,
na,
dun, dun, dun. If
na, na. Morph!
yes, and here's the crazy thing: Morph was a character that was completely created out of thin air. Essentially, he was not an original character, but they needed somebody to die. And you had the shapeshifter. And another shout out to the chat, LDG of Geeks and Joy. LDG, good to see you, man. Well, hey, instead of going to war, why don't you join me and Geek and we'll talk X-Men tonight? I mean, hey,
Yeah, come on, LDG. How about you hang out with some people who won't? Well, I'll give you a shit, but
I'll
it's
give you
just
crap, but I'll still respect you in the
I.
morning.
You know what, Ambassador? I remember watching uh Honest Trailers, and Honest
Yes,
Trailers did X-Men, and they said the second best series of the 90s. And when the first series is, and when number one is Batman, second place ain't too bad. And
that's
they
true.
were 100% right.
Well,
That
and
series, and I don't have it yet, but I'm going to get it on physical. That series was, it's the only one. It's like, we've had two movies who've done the Dark Phoenix saga,
yeah, and they both
and the
stunk.
cartoon did it
Did a
right
better
in the
job.
90s.
Well, yeah, because here's the thing. Granted, neither one of us, I don't think, were alive yet when the original Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas were published. They were done, like, I think in the '60s, the late '60s or '70s, somewhere along in
They
there.
were done in the 70s. I was born
Yeah,
in 79. I think it was
I
done.
was born in '78, so I know.
No, I think it was no, I think it was like 75, 76 era.
Yeah, somewhere along
So
in
it
there.
was before we
And
were
here's
born.
the thing: you had years upon years. You had 2 decades roughly of, or nearly 2 decades of time with these teams and with these characters, and they built up to the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas. You don't do it in a truncated fashion because it just doesn't work. When they did the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas in the '90s animated series, it was like, I think, 2 or 3 seasons in before they even touched the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas, roughly. And they did such a I mean, they took their time. It was in multiple episodes. It was like 3 or 4 episodes or more for both parts of the saga overall. And they absolutely nailed it when Jean Grey makes that sacrifice. But then the Fiend, when she comes shooting up out of the water and that giant fire bird is around her, and you hear that iconic screech that even though you never heard it before, but you could hear it in your mind and everything when you read the comic. And when they can when that piece of animation was on your TV screen, it was perfect. And then you
You
see,
know,
yeah, go ahead, geek, please.
oh no, I was gonna say my first introduction into Dark Phoenix Saga was that was the X-Men was the X-Men cartoon, because
Hmm.
people need to realize when that came out, that was in the 90s. It wasn't like we had access to trade paperbacks back then. There
Yeah.
was no reprint. I mean, reprinting was, you do a
Hmm.
second print and a third print, but trade paperback was not necessarily in circulation at that time. So for a lot of us, our experience in many X-Men storylines that we had heard about were through the cartoon.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and that was the great thing about the animated series is it introduced these characters and it gave people incentive to go out and find the comics, track them down either issue by issue or get the trade paperback, whatever way they wanted to do it. And people were like, "Okay, yeah, they got they did the story right." And people who had read the comic originally were watching the cartoons for heaven's sake, and they were like, "Yeah, they did this right." I mean, they hit all the beats, they hit all the points of the entire saga. There was some adaptation here or there, but you know what? That was okay because in certain aspects, adaptation was
Creative
necessary.
liberties.
Yeah, creative liberties, whatever way you want to put it. But
But the whole thing was the animated series really struck at that time. It stayed true to the ideal of the
mhm,
comic books. It tried to
yes,
bring the comic books to life and actually get us to want to go out and find those comic books.
yeah, and for people who have read the comics, they would go watch the animated series and go, "Okay, I see what they're doing. I dig it. I like it. Keep going." And
You know, I
that was the great thing about it. So go ahead.
oh no, I thought it was so stupid, funny and stupid when I saw this thing. It was this meme where it says, "When your father wants to play D&D with you," and I typed in, "Who the hell do you think taught his kids how to play D&D?"
Indeed. Even though I've never played Dungeons and Dragons ever in my
But
life.
you get my point. You
Yes.
know, it's like,
Yeah.
well, for example, today my wife saw for the first time Beetlejuice.
Awesome.
She didn't like it.
Well, hey,
Hey,
look.
hey, but you know what? Tim Burton is always, he's a niche. He's like
Yes.
Kevin
I agree.
Smith. He's like Kevin
Yes.
Smith. He's a niche.
Yes.
You either like or you don't like. I mean, you can, she said she enjoyed parts of it, but
Hmm.
it just really wasn't her thing. I said,
Was everything.
I
And
understand.
hey, and hey, as long as you give it a fair shake and a fair hearing, I can respect that. And
You
well, and you
watched it
know,
and she was like, yeah, it was fun, but no, it's not a movie she'd watch again,
yeah,
obviously.
and I get that.
And
And I
I was
get that.
like, well, that's okay. I mean,
But you know,
I hate when people try to make us geeks and nerds as monoliths.
yeah, we're not. We're individuals. And well, you know, and here's the thing to kind of bounce off your comment about the about movies. I remember a conversation I had back in the mid '90s with my uncle because he is was and everything a little bit now, even though in his elder years, he was a huge comic book guy himself, and we talked about the prospect if they ever did like live action movies for X-Men, who would play the different parts. And one character, the casting that he got perfect, and he called it, and I will give my uncle credit for this. We're like, well, who plays Professor X?
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Yeah, Bubba.
Okay.
Oh, oh, my son just came. I have a feeling I know the answer to this question.
Yeah, he called it. Patrick Stewart. And
Uh,
I was like, to my uncle, I know he'll probably never see this. You got it right, man. Because Patrick
and
Stewart was cast as Professor Xavier. And he played that part, I think
perfectly.
personally, perfectly. And I think James
Um,
McAvoy as young Xavier was a great casting too. You know, the crazy thing was I liked X1. I mean, when X1 came out, I was like, holy crap. They're actually
I was
doing
in the
it.
same boat.
I was like, holy freaking crap. We're actually going to see this live action. It's not a comic book. It's not a cartoon. It's live freaking action. How are they going to pull this off? And
Now, this
I
came out after Spider-Man, and I was more
actually,
excited.
no, I think the first
No?
X-Men came out before the first Spider-Man did. I'm
Are you
pretty
sure?
sure. I'm pretty
Well, we'd have to
sure.
check. Check.
Let me hang on.
Yeah, check real quick. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
X-Men 1.
I thought Spider-Man
Actually,
came out
X-Men, the first X-Men came out in 2000. Spider-Man, I think, came out after that. I think it came out in like 2001 or 2002. Let me.
Oh, that sounds about
Spider-Man.
right. Let me check too. Spider-Man movie.
Hang on. I'm
Spider-Man
almost.
came out in 2002.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
So
X. But hey, it's not a competition.
No, absolutely not.
But you know,
X-Men came out in 2000. Okay, you're right. You're right. It came out 2 years prior.
Yeah. But and I know there has been some controversy around the director Bryan Singer, and we're not going to get into that controversy here. But something I will say in regards to what he did with these movies, at least the first two that he was involved with, and then of course when he came back for Days of Future Past, and we'll be spending some major time on Days of Future Past. Trust me.
Love it.
Yeah. What he was able to do was he was able to turn this into an ensemble film, which he's good with. Because if you think about one of his more well-known films before he did X-Men was, of course, The Usual Suspects, which is an ensemble film itself. One of the greatest.
You mean a masterpiece?
Yes. Yes.
I still haven't got my wife to watch that movie yet, but oh my god. Usual Suspects, folks, if you're in here and you have not seen Usual Suspects,
what are you doing with your life?
You have got to watch Usual Suspects. Oh my god, talk about.
I might do a watch party for that one sometime.
You do. Hey, you do that. I'm in. I love that.
Yeah,
movie.
trust
Absolutely.
me. Yeah, same here. I love that movie too. But what Singer was able to do is he was able to create a story within this semi-fictional universe. Because granted, it wasn't connected to the Marvel universe specifically. The X-Men were kind of off in their own pocket universe at this point because they were owned by Fox and weren't owned by Marvel anymore. I mean, the movie rights anyhow.
Yeah, I know what you. Well, you got to remember all that happened back in the 90s
when Marvel was
when the bubble popped and they were selling their rights off like candy.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course now, that came back to kind of bite him in the butt. But Fox was finally able to come out with an idea, a concept that Sony also kicked off on, and then eventually what's now Disney Marvel maximized on.
Exactly.
You gotta think it kind of came from X-Men's really what laid the groundwork. And it was really good. The only thing was, here was the thing. I did not mind. Honestly, I thought he did such a good job as Wolverine. I did
Oh,
not mind the fact that Hugh Jackman was way too tall.
yeah. Well, honestly, it's going to be hard for them to recast that character because Hugh Jackman did such a stellar job playing the part through all the movies that he did, even the ones that were kind of, eh. But they were able to craft a story.
I still like X-Men Origin Wolverine. I'm gonna
There
say it.
are there are good parts to it. I will acknowledge that part. I will fully and truthfully acknowledge there are good parts to that movie. It was just,
I get it. I get it.
yeah, yeah,
But I'm gonna say this:
yeah.
the Wolverine and Logan.
Oh, oh my gosh, yes.
Logan.
We're going to
I
talk about those two.
mean, yeah. Okay. Well, you're gonna have to keep the train going because dude. I love those. So
You're not the only one. Believe me, you are not the only one. But what they were able to do with that first movie, they were able to craft a story that was relatable, but also felt like it was just far fetched enough that it fit within the comic book movie genre. Because you've
oh
got
shit.
Rogue. Hmm?
Oh shit. I'm sorry. I forgot I was gonna say this. You mentioned your friend who said Sir Patrick Stewart.
My
I
uncle, actually. But
remember
yeah.
if you remember back in the day, Wizard. Do you remember the Wizard magazine?
Yes. Hmm.
It used to have a section of
Hmm.
who would play in a movie,
Hmm.
and there was an X-Men one, and I remember they had Patrick Stewart
Hmm.
there, and yes, I remember. And when I heard Patrick Stewart was going to play uh, Charles Xavier, I was like, yes, yes, yeah. I was like,
Yeah, I know.
you can't get somebody better than Patrick Stewart.
Well, I think if you think about it, you've got him, you've got Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, you've got Anna Paquin as Rogue, you've got James Marsden as Cyclops, you've got Famke Jensen, hubba hubba hubba, as Jean Grey, you've got Halle Berry as Storm, and then
Hava.
of course you've got one of the other great sirs of film and theater, Sir Ian McKellen as Magneto. You've
Actually,
got
I wanted to, I wanted to go into that. Think about Ian McClellan. He was
Mhm,
playing a Jew Nazi survivor, and
mhm,
he is a gay man.
mhm.
Grown up, as old as that man is, if anybody would get a comprehension of persecution in his life, a man like him would.
Yeah,
And
because think of
I respect that very much for him. Now, do I agree with homosexuality? No, but
that's neither here nor
it's
there.
yeah, that's neither here nor there. I'm not your judge and jury. God, Yahweh and Christ are your judge and jury.
Yeah,
That's it. But I'm not your judge.
yeah,
I judge you only on your accolades of what I see. And what you do in your bedroom, none of our
it's none of our
business.
business.
But
Exactly.
I actually got the concept when I found out he was gay
Mhm,
that, oh, this is a guy at his age understands persecution as
mhm.
a gay person. He would maybe not relate to the Jews in the exact
No.
extent, but
Yeah.
definitely comprehend something. Do you understand what
Well,
I'm
yeah.
saying?
Yes, I do. Well, and here's the thing. Stan Lee said this numerous times about the X-Men universe and their characters. They were always an analog or something to that extent for people that were always misunderstood or persecuted. I mean, if you think about it, Xavier and Magneto were parallels, or I don't want to say caricatures because that wouldn't be accurate, but they were a
I think
parallel. Well, let me just get this out, geek.
no,
They
go
were
ahead.
they were parallels of MLK and of Malcolm X, and
Thank
that's the
you.
way.
That I was
Yeah.
going to say the exact same thing.
So,
Yes.
um, but the great thing about the first X Men movie, it very much builds the world that and builds on the idea of the main principle of the X-Men universe, that these are people, are individuals who have these powers that make them separate from the rest of humanity. And as the parrot, as the saying always goes, people fear what they do not understand. And since mutants are other from us because they have these abilities, people are going to be naturally afraid of them. And then, of course, you've got people like Xavier, and you've got people like Magneto, or Eric Lyncher, his proper name, who have different aspects on how they feel the world should um, interact with Homo superior or mutants, and how that plays out throughout the movie, the first movie, and all the movies, honestly, and even going into the reboot movies that kind of tie back into the original first two movies, anyhow. Because what Singer did with Days of Future Past is he's like, we've erased Last Stand, so if y'all didn't like Last Stand, well, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And shout to the chat, Benson's. Guys, have you watched the leaked Spider-Man No Way Home trailer? Benson's, no, I had not, and I'm not going to, because I'm going to wait for it to be released by the studio itself. So I don't do leaks, and I'm not trying to
No,
be a
I have
killjoy.
not seen. No, I
So
haven't seen it either.
so and
I don't really go out of my way to look for leaks or anything like that.
I
It's
don't either.
not my thing.
Same
One of the things that was
here.
really done well with the is several of the X Men. Look, I understand X Men 3 is the least favorite of a lot of people's. I get that. I
Mm-hmm.
really understand that.
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed too, but I like how they never shied away from, hey, we did this. When they did the Wolverine, he was dealing with the after effects of what happened from X-Men Last Stand.
Yes.
And I was like, good, they're not shirking away. And then there was that whole thing. And that director, God, who was the
Brett
director of that?
Ratner.
Yeah. And then he's also the guy who did Logan. And then he foreshadowed right there, I see
Actually,
you
no. James
die.
Mangold did Logan.
Yeah, James Mangold. And it was like, you die holding your heart in your hand. And then when we get to Logan and he's holding her hand, and it was just it was absolutely beautiful. It was,
It was.
in my opinion, a beautiful swan song for Logan.
It was. Well, and Wolverine has always kind of been the center focus of the series in a lot of ways. Him and Cyclops and Jean Grey have always been, they you could almost say that they are the trinity of the X-Men universe in a lot of ways, much like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman are the trinity of the DC universe.
Yes.
And you have that great love, you have that love triangle for a very long time, and then eventually Scott and Jean finally get married. And I actually used to have the issue where Scott and
Yes, I
Jean,
did too.
and I kick myself to this day again that I ever traded away all my comic books. And I'm like,
Dude, trust me, I had that comic. I had Jean Grey and Scott Summers getting married. I
mhm,
bought it. I don't have it anymore. I don't have any of my. Yeah, I kicked
mm.
myself in the ass for getting rid of those things. It was a beautiful story because you got to understand, so many. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just want to bring up Benson's comment. He says, Ambassador looks awesome. Can't wait for your reaction. In regards to X Men, hoping Henry Cavill becomes Wolverine. Logan was fantastic and a poetic ending. Yeah, Benson's. I can't say I disagree. I don't know how I would feel about Henry Cavill becoming Wolverine. I'm not
No,
necessarily opposed to it, but I think there are other actors out there that could that could potentially play the role. I don't know any off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's somebody out there that could do just as good of a job.
I
I mean,
no, I can't see the guy who played Superman.
yeah,
As
because
now, I will say this. I
Mhm,
will say this. When it comes to Henry Cavill, I am all for him playing the Highlander, as I know he's doing in the reboot. And
mhm.
here's why: because I've watched The Witcher, and that dude knows how to work a sword.
Cool. Very cool.
So I'm totally fine for that. But Wolverine, no, no, he's taller than freaking even Hugh Jackman. We need
Yeah. No.
someone small. We need someone smaller. We need a small 5'4" burly kind of person.
Yeah. It's just
I mean,
and
if you're
well,
gonna
too.
do Wolverine again,
Mhm.
you go back to Hugh Jackman got it right because he did his personality. He did the personality real
Oh, he
well.
got the personality perfect. I mean,
But
Jackman obviously did research, did a lot of research. Here's a funny fact and everything. And Tim brings up a good point. Hey, Tim, I don't know if you're free tonight. If you want to join me and Geek and everything, I put the link up in the chat like I normally do. So if you want to join me and join us and everything and talk about this stuff and everything, by all means, you're always welcome here. He said they should just get an unknown to play Logan or play Wolverine. I would say that's not necessarily a bad
by the
idea.
way, Tim, love your. By the way, Tim, saw your latest couple of TikTok videos.
Same here. So, but yeah,
Oh, you're a TikTok. You're a
no,
TikTok
I
videos
catch
too.
his stuff on Instagram because he posts there too.
Ah,
So
okay, gotcha.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't have Instagram, but I see what he posts on TikTok.
yeah,
I have no problem with that. We can. There's obviously got to be a good unknown who could play Wolverine. I
yeah.
mean, just get what you need though is he's got to be the aggressive, burly, feral
Hmm.
kind of person he is.
Yes,
Hugh Jackman, we gave him a break for his size because he knew
he.
how to embody uh, Logan, even in
Yes.
even, oh my gosh. Okay, where are we gonna go? Where's next? Because we're gonna get off there because
Well,
I could talk Logan all day.
we're gonna talk Logan and everything. Um, the thing I will say about the first two movies that they did is they were able to focus the story around Logan and Rogue, and as fans of the comics know, you and myself know, Rogue and Wolverine have had a long standing friendship and everything throughout all the different iterations of the X-Men teams and so on. They've gone on their own adventures. There have been issues that have centered just around the two of them.
It was kind of a big brother little sister relationship.
Especially in the movies, yes, definitely, and everything
Yes.
because she's the younger of the two, obviously. But in the
Yes.
comics, they're more on an equal footing, but they still. The one thing I love about the X-Men universe is it's one giant family, but it's one of the most out of this world families that you would ever potentially meet. And I have to say, one of my favorite relationships within the X-Men universe is, of course, the one between, and I know it's a very convoluted story, the one between Scott, Jean, and Cable. And I loved all of the time hopping elements of that particular story with Cable coming back, being Madeline Pryor and Scott's son, and him getting sent into the future to be cured of the techno-organic virus that he was infected with by Apocalypse, because Apocalypse knew who he was going to be in the way back when, and that whole relationship. There is just before they did the Age of Apocalypse story arc in the comics back in, I think it was like the mid 90s or something.
Hmm.
There was a 4-part series called Legion's Quest where Xavier's son Legion tries to change the past or something, and I think he tries to kill Magneto, but instead he ends up killing Xavier. And there's also this other extraterrestrial threat and everything from out in the universe that is essentially changing all of reality. And there's a few panels with Scott and Jean and Cable, and I can't remember the exact dialogue, but the basic gist of what is said is Cable accepts Scott and Jean, or specifically Jean, as his mother, even though technically she isn't. Because you know as well as I do, Geek, that Madeline Pryor was a clone of Jean Grey created by Mr. Sinister. So, and
Hey, Yvette, what are you doing up
hey,
so
and
late?
well, actually for her it's morning.
Oh,
To
that's
one of
right.
the smartest and most intelligent and funniest women on the internet, not to mention a quantum physicist, the Lady Yvette Diavel. Yvette, good to see you, madam, and thank you, and good morning to you as well. Um, glad you could tune in. Glad you could tune in. Well, this morning or tonight, where we're at. Um, if you haven't figured out what we're talking about, we're talking all things X-Men tonight because I thought I did my Marvel stream and I had such a great time with that one. And I was like, I just wanted to spend some time and I wanted to talk about X-Men tonight. And got my fellow X-Men file here who loves these characters, loves this universe just as much as I do. So, but that is
What
the
do
one
you
thing.
think about? Well,
Go ahead,
you
Keith.
mentioned Cable, but let's not forget the story arcs that had Hope in them. Hope Summers, the Phoenix.
I'm I'm not familiar with her. I am familiar with Rachel Summers, who
Oh,
I do
Rachel
I do
Summers. Sorry, you're right. I wrong name.
well, no, I think Hope Summers was a character, but she was from a little bit. I think she was from a more recent iteration of the team, and I'm not
But
super
you're right.
familiar with
You're
her.
right. The person I'm talking about is Rachel Summers.
Yeah.
I remember reading a comic where she
Mhm.
got into a fight with her mother, Jean Grey, and they were fight. She was fighting as a Phoenix, and she talked about power. And Jean Grey goes power, and then she turns into the Phoenix. Goes, you don't know the meaning of the word, and actually scared her daughter into going back into almost an infant state.
Well, think about it. And that's the great thing about the X-Men universe is it doesn't just touch on the whole mutant characters. You've got aliens, you've got extraterrestrial threats, you've got time jumping, you've got multidimensional threats, you've got multidimensional characters. I mean, can you say Mojo and Shatterstar for heaven's sake? And
Yes,
you've hit the X-Men universe is so rich and so big. That's why I feel whenever they are merged into the main MCU storyline, we're gonna be in for, I think, at least from my perspective, we're gonna be in for one hell of a treat, and I think of one hell of a ride. Because
I
honestly, because honestly, Marvel was kind of hamstrung by those deals, or Marvel Studios was hamstrung by those deals that Marvel Comics made with Fox and with Sony. Now that Disney owns Fox and has made a deal with Sony, but especially the part with Fox now that they have the rights back for X-Men and for Fantastic Four, and tonight we'll focus primarily on on X-Men, obviously. They have got such a big swatch of
rich.
characters. Yeah, rich characters with decades upon decades of lore and story arcs to go through and everything across the board. I mean, quite literally,
Let's not even just forget Ambassador that
Mhm,
we can't just say X Men. Think X Men, New Mutants, X Factor, X
mhm.
Force.
Well,
I mean,
mhm.
those are
Well, and
just the
here,
ones I can think of off the top of my head.
okay, I remember every title from the 90s, and there were a bunch. Okay, try and keep up. There was X Men, Uncanny X Men, which was X Men Blue and Gold Strike Teams. There was
Yep,
X4, there was X Force, which was Cable's team. There was X Factor, which was at one point the original X-Men team of the first class of Xavier's students, and then got turned into a
and
government.
don't forget that was when. Don't forget, you know what? You want to hear one that really pisses me off? I
Mm.
used to have the comic book, the first appearance of Archangel, of Lawrence Worthington III as Archangel.
Mhm,
Used to
mhm.
have that damn comic.
Yeah. Let's see. The X Factor got turned into a government-funded and government-ran team of mutants. Let's see, you had Wolverine, he had his own comic. You had Cable, he had his own comic. You had Excalibur, which was a mix of both mutants and overseas superheroes that was stationed primarily in
Europe.
Great Britain. They had at one point had Nightcrawler, Captain Britain, had Rachel Summers, the Phoenix, and had a couple other characters. I can't remember who right off the top of my head. That was just through the 90s into the early 2000s. That was all the titles they had at that time. And
That's more
and
titles than I can remember.
I collected and read every single solitary title that they had at the time. I read every crossover, and I
Do you remember
loved them. And
Fatal? Do you remember Fatal when they had the
I,
holograms?
I had them, and I traded them away.
I
But
had I had them too.
2 seconds. Carry the show for a second. I gotta go to our spare
Yep,
room.
you
I'll
got
be
it.
right back. I will be right back. Just talk for a few minutes. I'll be right back.
You got it, buddy. Listen, folks, if you have a collection or your children have a collection, don't get rid of them. Hold on to them because you've got people like me, the ambassador, and many of us. We are geeks and we are trying to buy stuff that reminds us of our childhood. Don't get rid of your kids' childhood toys. You never know when they might want to see them again. It's going to be crazy. When you're a teenager, you're like, they're just toys, they're not worth anything. I'm going to tell you right now, go watch Toy Story 3. If you don't cry and you don't tear up, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. But don't think before you purge your stuff because you may regret that at some point. I'm buying stuff. I've rebought stuff that I got rid of because I regretted it. So really think long and hard about what you want in your collection, how you want your collection to go. That's how it should be. And for those of you who are parents watching this stuff and you have children and they're engaged in the toys they have, do yourself a favor. Don't get rid of their toys. Don't encourage them like our parents did to grow up and get rid of your toys because we are now in our 40s and we're like, we miss those things. They're not to make us feel like children again. This is what I've said about so long. Midlife crisis for a lot of people is they buy these new cars to make them feel young or make them feel sexy.
Okay.
Us, we buy, hold on a second, we buy our stuff here to remind us of our youth and how beautiful it was.
Here's one that I recently rebought.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
This is one of the one of the extra issues that they did that was a spin-off from one of the great crossovers of the 90s, Executioner Song. Now, this next one is not an original. It's a trade paperback, but I am very glad I got this, and we will probably segue with this into our next topic. But I want to show the rest of these, but I want to show this one, and then we'll go into.
Oh, Days of Futures Past.
Yep.
Oh, beautiful trade paperback. Well, that was the thing I was talking about, Ambassador. Back when we were young, this was, something we could. Oh, nice.
How much do you hate me?
Oh, I don't hate you. I'm very happy for you.
Now,
I don't there's that commitment I don't break. Oh, I remember that. I remember that cover.
this is the entire thing. The
Oh,
whole the
you want to
whole
hear something
damn
funny,
thing.
Ambassador?
Hmm.
I thought it was so funny. Somebody was like, they made a comment about X Force 98 or New Mutants 98, and they're like, I wish I had something or another. I said, I wish I still had the damn comic because I actually had New Mutants 98 when Deadpool first appeared. I had it. I could have been a collector. I could have been somebody. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
No, no, no. And here's the one that you've been mentioning numerous times, and we will talk about this, but I want to talk about Days of Future Past in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm. Fatal Attraction.
I wish I still had the miniseries. I kick myself at least once a day for ever trading away my comics, but I did.
That was actually Fatal Attractions was the first
Crossover.
story arc that I actually crossed and started buying comics outside my normal comic area.
Hmm.
It was the first time I ever did that. I mean, it was just beautiful. But go ahead, continue. Where do you want to go?
Well, the thing I will say, because I want to kind of, we've been talking about the movies. I know it segued back to the comics, but there's a reason I wanted to show these, obviously, because, well, you and I both collect this, and people who see this live or catch it later will appreciate it as well. When they announced that Singer was coming back after X2 and X3 and then Origins, and we can talk about those other ones if you want to, that's no problem. But when they announced that Singer was coming back after they had done First Class, we can talk about First Class for a few minutes because I really would like to, because I've never
Go
really had a
ahead. It's your
chance.
channel,
I've
buddy.
never, well, I know, but I've never really had an opportunity to do like any type of discussion or review of the movies, from either Singer or from Matthew Vaughn, who did First Class, and then back to Singer, who did Days of Future Past, and then Apocalypse. When they announced that Singer was coming back to the X-Men franchise and he was going to be doing Days of Future Past, I was like, holy freaking crap! Yes, finally, they are doing the one story I always hoped they would. Besides the other ones I have sitting here next to me. When they announced that they were doing Days of Future Past, I flipped and forgive me, Lord, from what I'm about to say, I flipped my shit. And this is right around the time when I met Madam Ambassador. And the first time, yes, I know everybody's thinking, Ambassador, you godless Ethan. I don't care. The first time I went to see her in person, because she came to see me first and everything, because, well, it was just how it worked out. I was like, hey, would you want to go to a movie with me? And she's like, sure. She's like, what do you want to go see? I was like, have you ever heard of X-Men? She's like, I've heard of it, but I'm not terribly familiar with it. I was like, well, they've got a brand new X-Men movie. I was like, do you know that there were other X-Men movies that had come out recently? She's like, yeah, I know about the other ones that they've done. I was like, did you see any of them? She's like, yeah, I saw them. And she's like, I liked them. They were okay. But she's like, I'm not like the expert and the fan that you are. But she's like, yeah, I'll go with you. So we went, our first movie together, and I still have the ticket stubs somewhere, was for X-Men Days of Future Past, and it was at a theater in her area. It was actually a Regal theater, which I'll say this, Regal theaters, whoo, they kind of put the ones in our area to shame just a little.
Hey,
But
Ambassador, keep talking. I'm listening, but I need to get some water.
okay,
Be right
go.
back.
Hey, dude, it's okay. But when they announced when Days of Future Past was getting released, I was keeping track of everything, every piece of emotional material that they released. I was on top of every poster that they dropped. I looked at and saved. I was like, yes. And then when the first trailer finally dropped, I was like, I am. I'll tell you all in all honesty and earnestness. I actually cried because it was an adaptation, but they made this story work. And when the movie came out, and me and the man ambassador, this is when we when we were dating, we went to see it. I was sitting there next to her. I had my popcorn. We had our sodas, and once the thing was over with, I was like, and she looked at me and she was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "They got it right. They did. They got it right." I was like, "This is the one story I always hoped that someday someone would finally do, and they got it right." I mean, I know they changed parts of it. Instead of being Katie Pryde that gets sent back in time and yada yada yada, it's Wolverine, but it made sense in terms of how they had crafted the universe. And when I saw Blink, and I will tell you all, I have the Marvel Legends figure of Blink, one of my all time favorite characters. When they had Bishop and they had all the characters that I knew so well, they had Sunspot, they had a more advanced um, form or version of Iceman, and all those things. And then they showed the new Sentinels. I'm like, holy freaking crap! These new Sentinels are way more intimidating than the original design. But it was cool in how they tied Mystique and her ability to mimic and change into how the Sentinels worked. I loved it, and they had Peter Dinklage as Bolivar Trask. I'm like, can this movie get any freaking better? And Peter Dinklage as Bolivar Trask. I don't care that he's a little person. It's his ability to act, and I actually like the fact that I liked how they played this version of Bolivar Trask. He wasn't necessarily evil.
He
There's a
was
line of time.
ambitious. He was a okay. Here's something I've said about people. They talk about corporation. They go, what I said. Listen, you can't run a business being always nice. Business is cutthroat.
Yep,
You want to survive, you're
yep,
going to have to get ruthless at times. It's
yep,
a sad reality, but it's just the truth. And Trask was not an evil man. He was just an ambitious guy who thought he was doing something right. And, it's the same thing. Think about Skynet. They didn't
mhm,
build Skynet to destroy the world, they were actually trying to do something right.
yes,
But we all know but Ambassador, you and I know the old saying,
mhm.
the road to hell.
Is paved with good intentions, and
Amen.
we've got another addition to our panel, ladies and gentlemen.
Awesome.
You know him, and you love him. He is one of the most attractive men, and I say this as a very happily married and very secure in my sexuality. A very good Adam Driver lookalike, the one and only Tim Possible.
On your
Tim,
left.
Tim, good to see you, man.
Hey,
What's up,
Tim.
everyone?
Good to see
Hey,
you, bud.
Tim.
How's it
How you
going?
doing?
Hey, love your.
Pretty
Hey,
good.
Tim, man. I get your TikTok post updates, man. Good stuff.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, people seem to like the Carl character I made up from construction.
Coral.
I'm going to be honest. I told
Coral.
him. I'm going to be honest. I told him when I saw it was like my biggest thing was like, where the hell did he get the Nightwing outfit? Because I was like, they can talk Kylo Ren all they want. Dude, you in that outfit, especially with your hair, pull it back in a ponytail. Dude, you got Nightwing from the 90s. You got Dick Grayson down
Oh, yeah, appreciate it.
pat.
Yeah, that outfit is from the Arkham games or whatever. I'm a big fan of Nightwing. I can't wait for the Adam McKay film to come out whenever that does. So, yeah,
Excellent.
I appreciate it, though.
Well, Tim, we're obviously, as everything indicates, we're talking X-Men tonight, and I've been gushing over Days of Future Past for the last several minutes. So, but we can backtrack. This is free flowing conversation. X-Men, what you love, what you thought was meh, or just the floor is yours, bud.
Gotcha. I guess the first exposure I had to X Men, I guess, was the '90s series. Growing up with that, the kind of like intro music or whatever, na 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 na,
No, no.
or whatever. Yeah.
We haven't even talked about the fact that they introduce shit, what's her name? Right off the bat. Jubilee.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, Jubilation Lee. Bless you.
Yeah, they introduced a female character right off the bat in a show in the 90s, and
Yep.
we all went for it. We
Well,
still
yeah.
went for it. So,
Well, let's be
this
honest.
is the thing. I know
Jubilee
I
was
just
kind of
have
cute.
to point that out.
Let's be honest here. For you and me, Geek, at least, Jubilee was kind of cute.
I thought she was cute, and
Jubilee
Rogue too.
Which there was nothing wrong with her. She was kind of, well, actually, I think it was interesting. Jubilee was, I think, what they were trying to do with the Mortal Kombat movie, which was take a character to be the introduction. Unfortunately, the character they used was a character that in Mortal Kombat never existed. Where in X-Men, they took a character that most of us could relate to, social outcast. I mean,
Yeah.
most of us as geeks, nerds. Look, I got, if I had a role playing book, a comic book, comic cards, I got my ass kicked or I got joked on. And, this is why I say all these little DSs who are sitting there telling us how our culture should be, those are the SOBs who are riding the coattails of the giants who took this culture back when it was a subculture.
Hi.
Yeah,
Yes.
me too.
But yeah, Tim, you bring up the anime series, and like I said, we're gonna this. I do want to keep some sort of format, but honestly, tonight's just about talking X-Men, and we can go back and forth or whatever. I don't care. The animated series, in a lot of ways, was groundbreaking because it told some very heavy storylines, and it did it in a way that wasn't pandering, or it didn't try to dumb it down for the audience. And that was one thing I really appreciated. I will say this, I even think the X-Men Evolution animated series that they did, I think like in the late 90s and early 2000s, it did a good job of dealing with that whole concept as well. And I think it did a pretty good job. I mean, if you think about it, they took Rogue, who had been the focus of the movies and everything, and they turned her kind of into the focus of X-Men Evolution. And whereas Jubilee was very much a 90s girl, she had the very bright clothing and everything, which is what most girls in the 90s wore, was very bright clothing. It was very unorthodox. It was very strange. I mean, you look at how she was
flashy.
costumed. Yes, exactly. And they kind of carried that over in the live action films as well. But it worked because they knew what parts of the costume to use and what parts to kind of leave out, and it all worked. But what they did with Rogue in the X-Men Evolution, they made her a goth, which even in our culture nowadays is kind of on the fringes of society in a lot of respects. But not only was she a goth, she was also a mutant. And if you look at those two paradigms, it works. But the thing that the animated series did not shy away from was going that extra mile to tell the stories that they want to tell. Because this was a cartoon that was kind of meant for kids, but they also knew their audience was going to be people our age, or maybe like Tim's age or anything, who didn't necessarily grow up watching or reading the comics, but knew of the X-Men universe and everything within Marvel. And I would say some of the really good stories that they told, one in particular was when they were in the Savage Land, when Xavier and Magneto and then Scott and Jean were all kidnapped by Mr. Sinister, because Mr. Sinister had migrated to the Savage Land, and you had 2 or 3 different storylines that were within the Savage Land part of the X-Men universe. And of course, you had, I think one of my all time like just one a single episode stories was when Juggernaut, who is actually Xavier's half brother.
Stepbrother.
No, is it step? Yeah,
Stepbrother.
it is. Yeah, it is
Stepbrother.
step brother. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, because he had Marco had already been born. He wasn't. He wasn't.
His mother had married Juggernaut's father.
Yeah, Xavier's mother had married Juggernaut's father. That's right, and
Yes.
Marco was already in the picture. Yeah,
Yes.
and the interesting thing with that was they were able to. Xavier was like, yes, he has been a bully to me all my life. He has been nothing but a thorn in my side, and he's like, he hates my guts, but he's still my family. But the interesting thing is, at the end of the episode, when he gets his powers back, he just leaves. He doesn't attack. He doesn't go after the X-Men. He doesn't go after Xavier. He's just like, nope, we're good. I'm out of here. And then, of course, he shows up as a henchman for Black Tom Cassidy at the beginning of the Phoenix Saga, and gets his ass handed to him by Gladiator, a member of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard.
One of the nice things though is if you take that, it's a little bit of in Days of Future Past when you have young Xavier talking to young Mystique.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at it this way, take Juggernaut out and put Mystique in the place as she is the family member instead of Juggernaut, and look at how he acts around her. And in Days of Future Past, it's even more prevalent. And there are people who say, well, this doesn't make any sense because she, fucked him up in the first movie. It's like, no, she's angry with him because she feels betrayed by him.
Mm.
If you look at Days of Future Past and if things had gone the same way, she would have probably still felt betrayed by him. And that anger would have grown because he never learned not to be just a straight big brother. Do you get what I'm saying, Tim?
Yeah, I can understand that parallel. They made some adaptations or creative decisions for it to work, because I never thought like Mystique was like, maybe because it was Jennifer Lawrence, but they really gave her like a big role in this, in the newer ones. Like in the regular X-Men movies, she didn't seem that pivotal, right? Like she's more of a side character. And in this, like X-Men Days of Future Past and all that, they made her more like relevant, I guess.
Character. Yeah, she becomes very central role. Yep. And a very central role to Magneto even. But it's interesting because when you see Magneto try to kill her, it kind of almost ties into The Last Stand where she loses her powers and he is willing to walk away. He somehow always maintains that ability to walk away. I saw very interesting parallels to that. And that's what I liked. They were like, look, we understand you didn't like the movie. We get it, but we can't say it didn't exist. So we're going to try and fix it. And they try to fix it in a very genuine way that I thought was very good. I thought Days of Future Past was a very nice. If I was going to look at, I like X-Men Origins Wolverine. I know a lot of people don't. I get that. I totally understand it. I respect it. I'm not saying it's a great movie. It's not. I enjoy it. But I like that. I like X-Men 1, 2. I get 3. Don't always like it. But 3 still ties into Wolverine, which I think is a fantastically done. The Wolverine, which I think is a fantastically done movie, which then ties into Days of Future Past, which then you have to go to X-Men First Class. But see, after X-Men First Class, I'll go with Logan, but I can't watch. I tried to watch X-Men Apocalypse. And even though I like Oscar Isaac, I'm sorry, I loved him in Deus Machina, one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
He was bad in Star Wars, and he was bad in this.
Well, actually, I liked X-Men Apocalypse. I do understand why some people wouldn't enjoy it and everything, and I get that. So, but honestly, it's Apocalypse is one of those characters. He is a huge part of the X-Men mythos. I mean, he's tied to so many characters and many pivotal characters in particular. And honestly, I think I don't think this will be the last time we see in Saba Nur. I think now that. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say this, Ambassador. Here's my whole thing. And this is just the truth. I compared him to Apocalypse from the cartoon series,
Mm.
and
Yeah,
the
and if you
cartoon
think about it,
series did Apocalypse fantastic. Remember when Rogue touched him
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and
And
tried
she,
to absorb his power, thinking
there is
she
one
could do,
depower him. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And this was when Angel warrants Worthington. We got to introduce him. He becomes Archangel. Yes, it's different from the comic, but
But it still
still,
works.
we got the four horsemen of the apocalypse. We
Mm-hmm.
got, it was so much better that when I tried to watch the movie, I was like, no, you got it
Yeah.
right with Days of Future Past, but to me, the whole apocalypse thing was like trying to watch them do the Phoenix Saga again. It's like,
Mm.
sorry, did not work for me.
They should have broke it down in part 1 and part 2. Give us a little bit more exposure of the character.
Yeah, I think instead of them doing Dark Phoenix again, I think maybe Apocalypse could have been broken up into two movies. And I do want to address Marcus Cruz. Marcus, good to see you again. I do want to address his question: how about Franklin Richards and Kitty Pryde? Being as we were talking about X-Men love story in the MCU. Marcus, they're going to have to build up to it. You can't just drop it on top of us and without any backstory. So, if they want to cross the X-Men and the Fantastic Four in that fashion, I say by all means do it, but they're going to have to build to it. And you're going to have to introduce the characters. You're going to have to introduce who they are. You're going to have to do all those things before you even get close to telling that story. So,
Do
but
you think they'll? Okay, now that was mentioned, do you think they'll do a Fantastic Four with them already having their powers and Franklin already being born?
they could, but I would much rather see a young Franklin at first for one particular reason. Because this deals with young Franklin.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, it's actually a follow up, Tim, to this. It's the trade paperback
This,
of Days of Future Past. This is
wow.
called Days of Future Present, and it deals with the Fantastic Four and with the X-Men going up against a mutant killer named Ahab, and
Oh, nice.
he's kind of a minor villain in the X-Men universe, but he's kind of a cool one.
Mm.
And if you
It's
want to talk,
interesting.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry,
Go ahead.
Ambassador.
Well, I'll just say this. With the Fantastic Four and the X-Men now within a few years going to be in the MCU, you've got a whole treasure trove of really outstanding villains that they can play with now. And I say they can even play with Apocalypse. They can obviously play with Magneto again. And there are so many others and everything, both minor and major. I mean, we have not gotten Mr. Sinister, not even close yet. We've gotten hints of him. And I will say this in terms of when I did my review for the New Mutants movie. I went to see it in theaters back last year. And I really enjoyed it. I was looking forward to it even when the first couple of trailers came out for it. And I got it for Christmas on Blu-ray back last year. And I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the movie, and I can see how it could potentially link into Logan itself. There's something I want to read for you all, and it's actually from Fatal Attractions, the one crossover that you and me, Geek, have talked about, and Tim, I think you're pretty familiar with. It's the last major, well, quote unquote, the last major battle between Magneto and the X-Men and Xavier himself. And
Oh, that. Oh,
I'll show you the panel. I don't think I should. I don't think I'll get
I'm
taken down for
going.
showing you this panel right here, Geek.
Oh, nice. Magneto.
Okay.
Oh,
This. Hold on. Just let me read this before you go geekasm on me.
Huh.
This is in the aftermath of Ileana Rasputin's death, Colossus's sister. I'm just going to read this and then we'll go from there. Actually, I'll read their dialogue. And this is between Xavier and Magneto. Only one of us was true to our word. For years, I convinced myself you weren't to blame for your actions. Each confrontation I hoped would be our last because I was sure you would come to your senses. I had to believe in you. In order that I could believe in the dream to which we dedicated our lives. That was Xavier. This is Magneto. Then you've wasted your time, Charles. For the man who made that promise, the man who shared your hopes of a better world, hasn't existed in years. If he ever existed at all. I refuse to accept that. Just as I refuse to allow you to continue venting your anger, your grief, and your disillusionment on the weak and defenseless people of the world. If you will not take responsibility for yourself, Magneto, then God help me. I will. Commandeering Magneto's powers with his own. These two men rise above the earth with Avalon in their psionic thrall. A genetic Cain and Abel, locked forever in an eternal conflict as old as the forces of good and evil. And whereas Magneto, was often given to displaying the full range of his powers, Professor Charles Xavier was always less inclined. Until this moment. Forgive me for what I'm about to do. And with that, Xavier magnetically hurls Avalon into space, lacking the courage and resolve to take the life of the man who he knows will certainly return and once more threaten the entire world. For a fraction of a moment, he'd like to believe it's all over. The struggle, the conflict, the motivation to continue a fight that is his and much more than his. But he knows better. And this is Warren Worthington, Archangel. I am here, Charles. Of course you are, Warren. I expected nothing less from any of my X-Men.
when Charles ripped out Magneto's mind, it is the only time it was dramatic for someone like me because it was the first time
Yep.
we ever saw the true raw anger. I mean, okay, if I'm going to give this in a comparison, looking at that was like looking at Ambassador Kosh when he unleashed his rage. And Ambassador, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, from Babylon 5, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I mean, he was just like, I mean, he snapped. He had enough. He had always tried to work with, and that was the thing about this was the thing I never liked was when they called Magneto's unit the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. They never saw themselves as evil.
No.
They never saw themselves, and I was glad when the show called it My Brotherhood of Mutants, the movie,
Yeah.
and not My Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, because they
That
never
was
saw themselves.
they had a different perspective on how
Yes.
mutants were to relate to the rest of humanity. And you know, I will say this: throughout all of the live action movies that we have gotten over the last several years, minus Dark Phoenix, which I refuse to watch, and
I have not seen it, and I won't.
no, I won't either. But I will say this: they carried off the dynamics that are pivotal and central to the entire X-Men universe and their mythos and everything else across the board. It's about
You
the
know what?
outcast, and it's about family. And
You know,
those are the two dynamics that they, to certain degrees of success or failure, hit upon very, very well. So, Geek Tim, go ahead, please.
yeah, I was gonna say with this is if you look at the X-Men movies, they embody something of a quote from Star Trek DS9. Everyone thinks they're the hero, even the villains, especially the villains.
Well, and if you think
Anybody
about
know who that? Anybody know who I'm quoting there?
would that be Ducat?
No, Garrick and Bashir.
Oh, okay.
Because
You
remember,
know
Garrick
DS9 way
told
better than
him,
I do.
he goes, well, Garrick told him, everybody thinks they're the hero of the story. And Bashir goes, even the villains? And Garrick goes, especially the villains.
Yeah.
You think anybody wakes up one morning and says, I'm going to be the bad guy?
Mhm.
They think they're a good guy. They think they're doing the right thing.
Okay.
I mean, that's
Well,
the interesting thing about the dynamic between Charles Xavier and Magneto is
mhm.
they both want the same goal. And that's why the clash is he's the Martin Luther King and he's the Malcolm X. They
Yeah.
want the same goal, but they're going about it different ways.
Well, and you know,
And
and
there's
here's
no necessarily saying. And one thing Stanley never said was which was right or wrong.
exactly because Lee understood. And you know, I will say this for because I remember going to see X-Men First Class back in 2011. And it was actually just a week or so after my separation and my divorce from my first wife. And I was staying with my mother at the time. And I didn't have a car, but there was a theater not too far from where she lived at the time. And I was like, Mom, I'm going to go to the movies. She's like, okay. She's like, you want me to drive you? I was like, no, I'll walk. I was like, it'll do me good. And I went to the theater and I got a ticket and everything and sat down and I took in first class and I was like, I see what they did here and I dig it. They were starting. I actually liked what they did with the reboot. They started in the 60s and worked their way. They're kind of working. They've worked their way up to present time. And I loved. I will say this. I liked more the character of Moira Taggart. I liked one of the lines that she said, and when one of the other agents in the FBI says, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Using some equipment that the bureau didn't equip me with." When she strips down to just her underwear, because back in the '60s in Las Vegas, that's how a lot of the girls dressed. It was normal. And I will say this: I love the story that Vaughn. I remember if I'm thinking correctly, if that's the name of the director, Matthew Vaughn, who did First Class, he did a great story in this movie. And you had the introduction of Sebastian Shaw, played by Kevin Bacon, and Kevin Bacon in anything is instantaneously awesome. But of course, you've got Michael Fassbender as a young Eric Lyncher, aka
Oh no,
Magneto.
Michael Fassbender was. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I gotta say, Michael Fassbender was. It was it for me for that movie.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
he was great.
him and him
James
and
McAvoy. James
yes,
McAvoy.
Oh my God, the chemistry between those two.
It worked.
I mean, I thought between Patrick Stewart and Ian McClellan was good.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe they managed to match something similar between those two, and they managed to do it. And they really shined it, Ambassador, in Days of Future Past when you have,
Mm-hmm.
young versions talking and the old versions talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, Days of Future Past is just an epically beautiful, poetic movie, in my opinion.
Yes. I actually have it on. I have it in Steelbook. I don't have many Steelbooks, but I have a few, and that's one Steelbook I have. And I'm glad I got it. So, Tim, I don't want me and Geek to monopolize the conversation. Please, your thoughts on anything we brought up. So, please, the floor is yours.
I guess let's go. I thought it was an interesting discussion as far as the villains. Does someone? Is there an echo or?
It might be you, maybe.
Let me hold on.
Question.
Hello. Okay, I think it's better now, right? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think may have just had to turn down your volume a little bit.
Yeah. So I think. Okay, I think that fixed it, but I think the whole villain perspective thing is pretty cool because, like, even with the Joker, he thought himself as like the hero, and we see that a lot with like these villains or whatever, like the Joker, Magneto, even Thanos. Even Thanos thought himself as a hero, and we were talking about What If earlier, or whatever, to tie him in or whatever. Even he was kind of in the background, but he still had his philosophy of saying he was proposing to people, and I thought that was they did that kind of well or whatever. But as far as X-Men, I think I love Logan. Maybe I think the favorite X-Men movie is probably X-Men 2. Hugh Jackman was relatively unknown. I think the only movie he had been in is like something small or like Swordfish with Halle Berry.
Well, Swordfish was actually after. I think Swordfish was
that was
after.
Actually, this was kind of actually. There's a funny story. The reason why he's not as bulk as he was he thought he could bulk up in a very short time, and then when he got hired for the role, they did the whole shirtless scenes later. Because he had to get bulked up. Yeah, it was so funny. He was like, he didn't realize this was his first major, beefy role and stuff.
Yeah.
So all those scenes with him with the shirt off, those all came after.
I didn't know that.
And I have to say, one of my all-time favorite lines from the first movie is, "So I see you got my shirt off again," and Gray is like, she just pushes him into the X-ray machine, and it brings up all those. But I will say this for the X-Men movies: the humor is very much on point. I really appreciate how well all of these movies, the majority of how well these movies were written. The big thing for me is that I've known these characters from my adolescence into my teen years, and what I had hoped to see was maybe not a one-to-one adaptation performance, but a good, faithful adaptation that brings new life into these characters who have existed since the 1960s. And what the people who worked on these live action films have been able to do is actually carry off that entire thing. Is give me something different with these characters. Don't tell me the same stories. Now, granted, I don't mind the fact that they have done different stories with them in terms of First Class, because First Class is a completely different story that we've never gotten before. And
it was very well done.
Yes, it was. But it was very unconventional because you've got a young Xavier, you've got a somewhat older Eric Lyncher Magneto, who's going on a crusade to find, well, as he said, let's just say I'm Frankenstein's
He said,
monster.
"I'm Frankenstein's monster."
And I'm looking for my maker. And
How poetic was that, though? If
I've
you've
watched.
if you've
Fantasy.
never read Frankenstein or never at least seen the movies, you folks, you're missing out because that whole "I'm Frankenstein's monster" and trust me, read the book because the whole "I'm Frankenstein's monster and I'm looking for my maker" that is literally from the book.
Oh yeah,
because that's what
and
Frankenstein's monster was doing.
and we've got another visitor to the ambassadorial wing, ladies and gentlemen. A fellow geek, a geek amongst geeks, the one and the only Ferris of Ferris Geeks World. Ferris, good to see you, man. Thank you for popping in tonight.
Up first.
Yeah. Hey, Ambassador. Hey, Grandpa Geek. Hey, Tim. How you guys doing?
Nice to meet you.
Good.
We've been just.
Well, I guess we meet up during the Marvel stream. I guess this is our second meetup.
Yep, pretty much. So, yeah, as geek, I think you were here for the Marvel stream, and Tim, I'm pretty sure you were too.
Okay. Well, apologize. Look, guys, I'm going to be honest. My memory is not the greatest sometimes.
Hey, geek, it's okay. So, Ferris, we've been spending the last couple hours or so and everything talking all things X-Men. So, it's just kind of open wherever you want to discuss or anything. The floor is yours, bud. So have at it.
Yeah, so before I get started, I just want to know if you guys could see my camera by now. I'm currently relocating in a new place by now. I'm actually on a different time zone.
Oh wow! Okay, cool.
Nice.
Yeah,
before we get started, I got to put something on first, just to let you guys know who my favorite X-Men is growing up.
Oh, I can respect that, dude. That's awesome.
Cyclops.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm a Cyclops guy, to be honest.
Hey,
I'm gonna say this. Sometimes I thought the X-Men movies kind of did Scott Summers a little wrong.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they got his role in the first movie okay, but he was underutilized in the second one. But in the third one, they just wasted him. It was a studio decision.
Yeah, literally, and that was one of the reasons why I hate. There are certain rules in the X-Men universe that you do not cross. You don't kill Cyclops, and you don't kill Professor Xavier. You broke those two rules. You broke my heart, Fox. You broke my heart.
At least they fixed it.
True. Yes.
At least you know what? Give them credit. I'm going to say this. Give them credit. They actually did what nowadays nobody does. They realize we screwed up. We're going to fix it for you because we know you fans deserve this. It's not your fault you didn't get the movie. It's our fault we didn't make the movie you deserved.
That's true. Now, Ferris, being you are a Cyclops fan, and hey, I respect that. Cyclops is one of my favorite characters. They're all my favorite characters, for Pete's sake.
Well, he was the de facto leader, wasn't he? Always for the most
he was
part.
the field.
Yes, he is the field leader.
He was the field commander. Well, he was field commander of Blue Strike Team. Storm was leader of Gold Strike Team, and the two titles for within the 90s was X-Men and then Uncanny X-Men. So, but yeah, Ferris, your thoughts, because I did put a poll in the chat and everything about if anyone's excited for the X-Men to be joining the MCU, and right now it's the poll is kind of interesting, to be honest with you. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Right now, it's at 59% for yes, 41% no. So, Ferris, let me ask you.
I was going to say, Ambassador, a good transition might be definitely start here. How do you think would be a good way for them to introduce
the X-Men into the MCU?
Yes.
Well,
And Ferris, I think that'd be a great way for you to start since you just got here.
yeah, Ferris, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I think I probably have to talk something like X-Men from the very beginning, since my first introduction with it.
Yeah,
I
sure,
mean, I think,
please.
Absolutely.
yeah, I think I did tell you guys like my first introduction was like back in the 90s, and my first encounter, to be honest, when I like saw the promo for the animated series, it's it was on a VHS tape for the first episode of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and I think I still have that VHS somewhere in my
You
house. I
poor
just
Dickie.
yeah, I just like currently moved into a new house because my parents' house are renovating. So when I get to know the X-Men, I was so interested like their animated series. So I asked my parents to put it up on the Fox channel. So the first episode, believe it or not, the first episode that I ever watched was like the Phoenix Saga episode. I think like I think
good
the
way to start.
Yeah, I think the Phoenix Saga is like my first introduction to the X-Men, the X-Men world. So after after watching the animated series, I got to like I get to like read the comic books, and I remembered that the first issue, it was the first issue of the second volume, and it was the first time the X-Men got a new makeover drawn by Jim Lee. Yeah, the 90s comic book, and it was
My
the mutant.
hero. My
Yeah,
hero.
it was the Mutant Genesis storyline. That was like the first like X-Men comic I ever read, and Chris Claremont, really did like a fantastic job to like what he wrote in the X-Men. I think like I started to like read one of his other works, from the Phoenix Saga to the Dark Phoenix Saga to Days of Future Past, and then the God Loves Man Kill storyline, which is the adaptation for X-Men 2. So yeah, that was like my first introduction like to X-Men. I think like to this day, I still consider like Chris Claremont like the best X-Men writer. But beside him, I think I would say Grant Morrison, who did New X-Men. But I did not like, I did not like when New X-Men ended up Cyclops and Jean's relationship. I think like that was like the biggest letdown to me, because I think like they should have like stick them as a couple to the end, because I'm a Cyclops and Jean fan, to be honest. I'm never was a fan of Emma Frost, because she was evil and then she joined the X-Men. She's kind of manipulative. Yeah, just not a fan of that character. I just consider if she's like a team player. That's kind of
Ferris,
like
if I'm
my
not
thing.
Ferris, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Emma Frost actually mentally rape Scott Summers at some point?
I think she may have did. Yeah, she kind of mentally like broke him down. I think that's probably like what led him to like uh I think that's probably like what led him to becoming, more edgier as a character, and also like what probably led him to him being the one of the Phoenix Five, the leader of the Phoenix Five in the comics, like after like Avengers versus X-Men. Yeah, and that kind of like destroy like Scott Summers' character, because don't like I didn't like what the writers done like in the late 2000s or the early 2000s during the Avengers versus X-Men. I thought they kind of did him dirty, but I think as a leader they still did it, did him solid. But when it comes to the X-Men writer who did Cyclops justice, is Chris Claremont. I think he understands the character and how he should be portrayed as a leader, to the X-Men, the field leader.
Well, yeah, because if you think about it, Cyclops was always Xavier's right hand man. Actually, hang on. I'm gonna pull something here.
Cyclops was literally, I mean, if you want to say, he was the Marvel Universe's Boy Scout Superman. I mean, he always tried to do the right thing.
Like Captain America, kind of.
There it is.
Yeah, so to do him where he's now joining Magneto in part of the Hellfire's Club, I'm like, when I heard about that, I'm like, that's not Cyclops.
That's totally out of character.
It is. And also him going with Emma Frost. That's why I said I remember reading that there was something about she mentally raped him and he still was with her. I'm like, no, you know what? You know what was my biggest thing? My biggest sign was, and I don't have the comic anymore, was when Cyclops and Jean Grey got married. That was a great
Yeah.
comic book. That
Yeah,
was a
I know.
fantastic comic book.
Well, I'm gonna read this little excerpt, and then Ferris, you weren't here earlier and everything. I showed off part of my collection, which is much smaller than it once was. This is a special collector's edition issue from the Executioner Song crossover. And it was a cute little thing. It was a cool little thing that they did. It's a compilation of different files that the main villain Strife had on all his opponents and his allies and so on. This one's on Jean Grey and Cyclops. If I continue, if my plans continue apace, I will have the opportunity to face you, to speak with you, to wipe a tear from your eye. All the things you never had the opportunity to do. I hate you both for that, for denying me that which you owed me, that which every generation owes the next. A chance to love, to learn, to grow from the wisdom of its forerunners. But I learned a completely different set of lessons without either of you. I learned of bitterness and loneliness, anger and agony. I learned the love. I learned of love and hate, mother and father, quote unquote, of the mutant destiny. Tonight, the child of tomorrow's hate will destroy you both. I will make you both proud, because I've learned my lessons well. And you will see that no one hates you both more than I.
That was beautiful.
Well, I didn't write it, but
Yeah, I know.
well, there's several of these. And I think, like I said, this is from one of the '90s crossovers that were there were a lot of them, and this is one of the very best. I actually got the whole shooting match. It's called Executioner Song, and there it is. I would love to see once the X-Men are introduced into the MCU. I would love to see this story adapted. But here's the thing: I don't want to see it as a movie. I would love to see it as a Disney Plus miniseries. I think it would do very well there. But of course, that's just my perspective. But of course, they're gonna have to build up to that one too. I mean, you can't just dump the X-Men in and then start doing all these stories with them. You've got to build up to all these different story arcs that they've got laid out over the last from the 1960s up until now. But I guess I am the eternal optimist, which oftentimes comes out to be on the right side. I am optimistic for what Marvel Studios and Disney will do with the X-Men once they bring them into the MCU. And as a fan of the X-Men, I want to see them incorporated into the MCU. I want to see them interact with all the characters that we've gotten to know over the last 10 years. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this stream tonight, was just so we could talk about this whole universe in itself. Because that's what X-Men is. It's its own universe within the whole Marvel universe itself. And
Ambassador.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you, I mean, let's think about this. How do you think the X-Men should be introduced into the MCU? I heard you say a series, and I agree with that. Actually,
Well, I was
you know
talking
this.
just real quick, just 2 seconds, real quick. What I was talking about was Executioner's Song. I would love to see that done as a miniseries rather than as a movie.
Well, it was interesting because my son was asking me a couple of questions about um, different games and movies, and I said, well, games don't translate well into movies, but
Very
we
rarely.
have noticed games translate better into TV series. I'm going to give you a point of reference. The Witcher. I've read the book, played the games,
That's what I've heard.
absolutely phenomenal first season.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely gonna get, yeah, absolutely looking forward to the next season. And actually, because of his sword skills, I'm totally fine with him being the new McLeod for Highlander.
Well, Ferris, Tim, let me pose the question that Geek posed to me. How do you think, or how would you like to see the X Men brought into the MCU? What would you think would be the best way? What would be the most entertaining way for them to do it? So, fellas, your thoughts?
Um, I don't know. I guess I'll go first. So I don't really like the fact that Marvel Disney got the X-Men, because it's like, it's becomes too saturated. I feel like even in Endgame it was kind of getting too saturated, and you're kind of taken away from all these other characters that are awesome, but they become bit characters or side characters, and there's not enough screen time. I feel like it worked better maybe in like a series, but if I was going to do it, I would treat it maybe not in the same universe, in like a multiverse type thing, and where they clash together, and some type of event brings them together, and one comes to help the other. Maybe the X-Men are traveling in time or whatever, and they go back to the past or something, or the future, and tell them, hey, this stuff is going to happen to you. We got to come together. We're going to help you, blah blah, because our paths align, something along those lines. Because, like, I mean, how many characters do we got already? And then, like, they're bringing these new characters in, and then there's thousands of X-Men. It's just like it gets too saturated. So I don't know, man. It's like,
Okay.
yeah.
Ferris, your thoughts?
Uh,
Honestly, though, when it comes to incorporating the X-Men to the MCU, I have to agree for what Tim said. I mean, I think multiverse is kind of a big thing now. Like, since we got like Loki and What If, and I think like the best way to incorporate it, I think I rather see like the X-Men as its own universe. Because yeah, I mean, incorporating the mutants into the MCU would be kind of getting more complicated, and I'm pretty sure Kevin Feige would be probably having a hard time finding a way to like put the X-Men together. I mean, I rather see like like what they did like in the I think like a good example, like a crossover like between multiverses is like uh when the Earth 616 Peter Parker go meeting Miles Morales. That I think that kind of idea. I mean, I think that's personally for me. I think you probably guys have to disagree or no, but I think like I rather see the X-Men like created in their own universe, like in a different Earth, not the main MCU Earth. So basically, like if you put if you put the X-Men in the MCU, and they're gonna have a crossover event, I think like a multiverse crossover between the X-Men world and the Avengers world would be like a much better idea, because if you like combine those two together, then we're gonna have like probably like a political event like between mutant hatred and all that, because I think that works in the X-Men universe, because in the MCU all the heroes are cheered by like by their people, But
Mhm.
in the X-Men world, like mutants are being hated by the public. So I think like for what Tim said, like in a separate idea, could work because there are two different worlds. Yeah, there are two different groups, two different heroes. Because X-Men is kind of like a more rougher and more edgier team compared to the Avengers, because the Avengers, they're like working in they're working in public. They're the people, the people cheer them. So goes to Spider-Man. But when it comes to the X-Men, and it's the whole different kind of thing. So yeah, and that's kind of like my take.
Yeah, it's a tonal
Uh,
shift, pretty much. Like
oh,
it's like sticking DC into Marvel. But yeah,
I'm gonna say this: Tim and Ferris, hammer, nail. I got nothing to add to what this said at all.
Well, and before I say my piece, just a quick to the chat, press play, streaming studios. Alan, good to see you as always, bud. Thank you for being here tonight. I hope you're having a good weekend and hope you're having a good night. So, but Tim Ferriss, when me and Geek were talking about this, I've brought this concept up numerous times before. How I think the whole play out of how the X Men universe or the mutants just in general are introduced into the MCU. Now, when I say introduced into the MCU, I don't necessarily mean that they should be like shoehorned in, but I think the concept of having them exist in their own universe within the multiverse, I think that would be the best way for them to be kind of. They could still exist within their own universe, but if you think about it, as you guys have all mentioned, with Loki and with What If, we've got these different branching multiversal timelines or whatever the case may be that exist parallel to one another that may at some different points cross over with one another, and you might have them interact with each other for a brief period, but then you would have the X-Men going back into their own universe and doing their own thing, which I'm okay with too. I mean, I don't necessarily need to see the X-Men up there with the Avengers and everybody else all the time, every time, because oftentimes that's not how it works. I mean, within the comics, do they all exist within the same universe? Yes, they do. But they don't always interact with one another all the time. So what you fellows are saying, I can't. I don't disagree with either. The same as Geek does. I think these. I think the X Men existing now or being owned by Disney gives us the opportunity to see not just themselves interact in their own universe, but potentially at particular points when it might be beneficial for the story or might be cool for the story for them to cross over. And well, it's kind of like with all these, with these two crossovers there's actually three crossovers here in my hands. This is only a handful of times where all the X-Men teams crossed over with one another to take on a bigger threat. In this case, it was Magneto. In this case, it was Strife, the clone of Cable.
yeah.
So, I don't honestly have any issue with it being limited in what they do. I just want to finally see this shared universe be linked, and
I think it's
even
going to be. I think it's going to be interesting, and call me crazy, but you know how the X Men universe is going to get linked to the MCU? Yeah. Hey, buddy. No, come here. Hold on a second. What's up, Bubba? No, hold on a second. Hold on a second. I got to mute real quick. My son wants to ask me something.
no, that's fine. That's fine. Do your thing, man. And I will bring up Marcus's comment here. Marcus, I don't want you to think I was ignoring you. I by no means have been. Having the cause of the mutants in the MCU being because of the snap is stupid, to be honest. You would ruin many rich backstories of famous mutants if they just showed up. Yeah, Marcus, I have to agree. And
I
he says
agree with the. I agree with the
they're all going to
concept
be in
of
Secret Wars. I don't know if they're going to introduce it that
No, I
soon.
don't think it's going to be the Secret Wars. I don't think
No,
they're going to go
I
there.
don't either. Honestly.
But what
it's
I think is, I think Tim and Ferris have the right
Well,
idea.
Geek, Tim was going to say something. Then you go ahead.
oh
Tim,
no,
you're
I
saying.
just want to like I don't think Marvel has, to be honest, has put out one like bad film, like horribly bad film. I think they're all good.
Yeah, I agree.
So I trust that Marvel has a plan, that they know what they're going to do. So like that's all I got to say.
Okay, Geek, you were saying. Go ahead.
Well, I was saying I agree with what Tim and Ferris and you guys are saying. I like this idea of, if we're going to go into the multiverse era, yes, let's let the X-Men and maybe even the Fantastic Four be from one part of the multiverse.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it too, one of the big facets of the Fantastic Four, a lot of their adventures, a lot of their missions, and so on, deals with both space travel and multidimensional travel, and to certain degrees, time travel, even. So, if you think about it, the Fantastic Four could be potentially the linchpin that connects the Avengers or the main MCU Universal line over to the X-Men.
I would love it if it was the Fantastic Four and the Silver Surfer.
Well, you think about it, eventually.
Sorry, but I'm a big Silver Surfer fan.
We all, I am myself as well. So, but here's one of the big things, and this is something that's honestly, it's an iconic panel, and if they don't necessarily have to go back and do another version of Days of Future Past, but something I would love to see just as an image and everything, and maybe a what if they continue the series down the road. Let's see here. Well, here it is. And Geek, I think you have this as well. I'll try and hold it up so y'all can see it. This is one panel from Days of Future Past.
Oh,
and
yeah.
If you look at the name,
yeah, I remember that.
Charles Xavier, Ben Grimm.
Yeah.
Because this takes place in a universe where the oh wow, Johnny Storm is right. Johnny Storms is Reed Richards, and Reed Richards is right behind Susan Richards. Is right. Reed Richards, Susan Richards, Ben Grimm, and Johnny Storm are all behind that first line of headstones. So now, here's the thing.
Think about this. When you think about this, when they're doing movies now, what stories are they doing? What is the most recent story they ever did in comics was Endgame. Every other storyline they are trying to get from back in the past. They're not taking from the current storylines. They are going to the past because they know that is what the fans really want. We want to see those things. But like I said, I think if we have the Fantastic Four, like you said, Ambassador, be that linchpin, be that bridge between the MCU and the X-Men universe, I think that could be an excellent storyline. Excellent storyline. Absolutely.
Who all thinks that Silver Surfer is going to show up in Eternals in like an end credit scene, or like?
Don't tease me about him.
Okay, all right. Now, Tim. I'm actually kind of glad that you did bring this up, because here's the thing: the Eternals and the X-Men are linked in a way that I don't think a lot of people have ever caught on to, unless you really know or you've really studied the lore and the history of the Eternals. Technically speaking, the Eternals are mutants. Now, here's the thing, and I credit Comics Explained 100% for this, because I didn't really know this, but I wanted to know more about it because, well, I'm a comic geek, obviously. The Eternals, the Deviants, and the Mutants. The gene for mutants was implanted in humanity by the Celestials. The Celestials created the mutants, or created the Eternals, and their offshoot, the Deviants. Essentially, the Eternals are augmented or mutated human beings. So we are getting hints, very small hints, that mutants are coming, or the mutants are coming, because the Eternals, like I've said now, they were the first form of mutants that were ever created. And this goes way back into the lore of the Marvel universe, just in and of itself. And I will tell you all, when that new trailer dropped, I was like, now they've made sense of it. Where have the Eternals been all this time? They were forbidden by the Celestials to interfere, except if it was in the case of a deviant incursion or a deviant attack on humanity. Because in a lot of ways, the Eternals were guardians, but they were restricted in what they could and could not do by the Celestials, because let's be candid, the Celestials, while they are in the higher tier of cosmic beings within the Marvel universe, and this is the one thing that I knew they were going to eventually build to, because this was one of my all-time favorite aspects of the Marvel universe, was when they introduced the cosmic beings and all these cosmic conflicts, like the Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity War, the actual Infinity War trade paperback that was a follow-up to Infinity Gauntlet with Adam Warlock and Thanos and the Magnus and all those other things.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my buddy. I'm still waiting for my man We
hey, all are.
Ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
I like Marcus Cruz's theory there. I think that's nice.
It could happen, maybe, but we're just going to have to wait.
It was a fun theory.
It's not a bad theory. No, I'm not saying the theory isn't without merit. So, but
all right. Hey, Ambassador, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to let you go. I've been with you for 2.5 hours. Wife's ready for bed, so
I appreciate it.
Sorry, man. Love you, but I gotta do what the boss wants. All right, Tim. Great to see you, bud. Ferris, nice to meet you. Take care of you all. Great stream, Ambassador. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. You take care, bud. I'll talk to you later.
Peace and a long life.
See you.
Live long and prosper. All right. Well, fellas, the floor is still yours, so if you want
I think I should
go ahead, Ferris.
I think I should point out something about the Fantastic Four. They could still fit in the MCU because, like, most of the stuff that like Stan Lee created, like in his career, when it comes to Spider-Man, to Fantastic Four, Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, or any other characters, sometimes they create. Sometimes, like, he created with an origin, like how the how their characters become their new alter egos. But when it comes to the X-Men, I remember, like, behind the scenes, when writing it, he is tired of writing origin, so he has this idea of natural mutation. I mean, that is like one of the reasons why X-Men is its own world, and that's why it's so unique. It's rough, it's much more edgier, and I don't think like the Fantastic Four could fit in the X-Men world as well, because back then I remember that Fox wanted to do a crossover between the Fantastic Four and X-Men, but that didn't really come into fruition. But now with Marvel having Fantastic Four, I think it still really makes sense. It still makes sense that it could fit into the MCU, because in the comics we all remember that when they got their powers, they got into an accident in space, and when they got their powers and they saved lives, they became celebrities. It's the same way like Iron Man, because yeah, when Tony Stark became Iron Man, he revealed his identity to the public, and he's a celebrity, of course. I mean, yeah, I think the idea with a multi-dimensional crossover, and because we all know that Reed Richards is one of the smartest characters in the Marvel universe, so when it comes to getting a crossover between the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, or MCU Fantastic Four soon, or the Avengers. I think yeah, multi-dimensional crossover is still like could be a really good potential idea to have these two between two or three groups coming together. I think and that's the way how it is. I'm pointing out Fantastic Four because they are like they're kind of like are like the Avengers, because they're loved by people. Of course, they're like celebrities. Yeah, and if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, and that I will say this for the Fantastic Four movies in the early 2000s. That's the one thing that the first movie did fairly well. It did play up their his internet probably glitched or anything. As soon as he comes back in, I'll bring him back in. But yeah, the one thing that there he is. Okay. So, all right. The thing I was saying first before you dropped, the one thing that the early 2000s movies did very well was it did play up the celebrity of the Fantastic Four team, and that they were kind of these globe-trotting team of superheroes or whatever. The only thing that they didn't really land on very well in the movie was doing any type of adventures with them in the first movie. They got their powers, and then they were trying to figure out a way to get rid of their powers, except that some of them didn't want to get rid of their powers, and then you just got the introduction of Dr. Doom. And while I like Julian McMahon's portrayal and I like the look of the character, that was not Dr. Doom. It was something else. Of course, it wasn't Jonathan Trank's Dr. Doom either, and oh my gosh, shoot me in the head now.
I just gotta point out, like, when it comes to portraying Doctor Doom, I mean, I like Julian McMahon because I mean, I love his his acting and charm. I used to watch that show with my sister a lot, and when it comes to him, I mean, he could play a bad guy, but I just feel bad that he's just they kind of downgrade the character. That he's like the ruler of Latveria. I mean, he could actually like do something crazy in the movie, like, I don't know, probably using the cosmic I don't know, maybe like the cosmic energy, the cosmic storm that they got going into space, and probably like use that to like change the whole world. I mean, it's like the same thing like what Magneto did in the first X-Men movie. He uses a machine to like like to turn the UN leaders into mutants. That's like the craziest and diabolical thing about the first X-Men movie, which I still love to this day. And I still debate myself like whether if I prefer the first one or Days of Future Past, because the first one has a really cool original story, because I don't think Magneto has ever has ever turned anyone into mutants in the comics, but in the movies, that really worked well. And I think it should be the same thing that Doctor Doom should have done in the first Fantastic Four movie. The same kind of idea, same kind of idea what Magneto does in the first X-Men movie. And yeah, it kind of like downgrade his character when it comes to adaptation. I mean, they could have done it better. Another thing I didn't like about the Fantastic Four movie is I didn't like the casting of Jessica Alba as Invisible Woman, to be honest. I didn't. Yeah, she's kind of like the weakest part of that movie. I think they should have cast, like, I don't know, maybe like Charlize Theron or something. I could see her.
Ooh,
that I could have seen. Yeah,
she's a good actress too. Charlize.
She's a good actress, and well, let's be honest here. They're eventually going to have to start casting these characters. Now, granted, there have been a lot of fan castings. I know Marcus Cruz and myself, and everything to a certain degrees, are fans of John Krasinski and his real-life wife, Emily Blunt, being Reed Richards and Sue Storms Richards, and everything, Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. But I mentioned there are loads of other actors and actresses out there that could do those roles just as well. Now, the one thing I would say say if he would be willing to come back and do it, even if it was just voice work and it was completely CGI or whatever. I would love to see Michael Chiklis return as Ben Grimm, the Thing, because I thought he was one of the best parts of it, because he did play that role very well. I know we won't get Chris Evans back as the Human Torch, and that's okay, because, well, he went on to do something much more epic. I mean, can you say Captain America? But in terms of who are they going to get to play these characters, and let's be honest, they're not going to introduce every single solitary X-Men character right out of the bat. There's just simply too many. I think Press Play had a good theory. They'll be trickling in a little at a time. And I think that's the best move forward. Now, what the first movie and even what First Class was able to do was they gave you the basic gist of who the characters were, and then you hit the ground running with their first adventure. And honestly, the one thing I loved about First Class was that it was very well paced, and it gave you time with all of the characters and gave you backstory to what they could do, who they were. And then, of course, you had one of the greatest cameos of all time with Mr. Hugh Jackman doing a one scene, one line cameo in First Class, where he tells Charles and Eric Magneto to go F themselves. I'm sorry, I laugh my ass off every time I see that.
I love that cameo.
I heard that was improv. That was not planned.
It very well may have been. I don't know for sure, but still, going through, what the second X-Men movie was able to do was it took what they had established in the first film, and they built up the stakes. And as you've mentioned, Ferris, they did adapt certain elements of God Loves, People Hates, the X-Men story arc that deals with the Reverend William Stryker, except in this case, you've got Brian Cox playing a curmudgeon old U.S. Or I think he's a general, and it worked. And I honestly, there are so many other stories that within the X-Men universe that they potentially can do. I mean, I know I've mentioned Executioner Song and sorry, slight brain fart, and Executioner Song and Fatal Attractions, but you've got so many others out there that they could do, and they've got other stories that they could just, if you get good enough writers, you can do just about any type of story with these characters and it'll work. I mean, for heaven's sakes, let's just spend a few minutes and let's talk about the Wolverine and Logan, because these two movies, one is a bookend for the entire X-Men saga, but it's also a bookend for Wolverine and Charles's journeys as well. And I have only been able to watch Logan once, and it was in theaters. And I'm eventually going to get it on home video. I'll probably get it on Blu-ray or 4K if I can find it on either. I would prefer to get it on 4K if I can. But considering the story that they told and the fact that they got James Mangold to come back after he had done, after him doing the Wolverine, and this was by no means your atypical comic book movie, much less your atypical superhero movie. And it is a beautiful story. It's got really good beats in it. You've got Wolverine and Xavier, who are the last of a seemingly dying breed, even though they're not. And you've got Logan discovering that he's got a daughter he wasn't even aware existed. Logan is a hard film to sit through because we all love these characters so much. We love James Howlett, aka Logan, aka Wolverine, and we love Professor Charles Francis Xavier, PhD. We love these characters, whether we've read them in the comics or we just know them from the films. And what Mangold and what that cast was able to do with that movie was nothing short of astounding. I mean, I sat there once it was over, and Ma'am Ambassador was with me, and she's like, that was hard to watch, but it was so damn good. I was like, yeah, honey, you're right. So, but guys, I know I've kind of rattled off here. So, your thoughts on the Wolverine and Logan?
I guess, I actually like the Wolverine. I feel like it gets a bad rap because what they did to Deadpool, which I could understand. I didn't like them doing that to Deadpool.
Real quick, Deadpool wasn't in Wolverine. I'm talking about. I'm not talking about X-Men Origins Wolverine. Okay. I'm just talking about the Wolverine.
That does not count.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
No, it's okay.
I've only seen Logan once completely. I think I've seen it on TV or whatever, but it was kind of in the background. But I watched it in like opening night or whatever. And I was like, man, gosh dang, I felt that emotion. I felt like teared up, and because there's so much Wolverine's my favorite X-Men, and I always dug his style with just like his whole demeanor and how he carries himself. He's like, "What's up, bub?" or whatever, and he always he's smoking a stogie or whatever. But no, it sucks to see him go. But they did it right though. They did it right. And it makes sense. I looked at that movie like a more so like a what if, right? Like it felt like a different universe per se to me, just because they kind of beat around the bush about what happened to the X-Men. Was it essentially that Professor X killed them on accident because
because he's suffering from, I think, Alzheimer's or dementia or some sort of neurological disorder, unfortunately. And it caused him to lose control of his powers, and he linked minds with so many of the students at the school, and he killed he unfortunately killed just, I think, all of them or close to all of them.
Yeah, it's great because the whole dynamic in the other films, he was always Wolverine was kind of like this more rebellious person, and then he's like the one taking care of old man Professor X or whatever. But
yeah. And just real quick, press play. Good to see you, man. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. So get you some rest, and we'll catch you on the flip side. So, Ferris, your thoughts on Logan or the Wolverine?
You know what? I kind of debate myself whether I like the Wolverine or Logan, because Logan was such a really good epic conclusion. But when it comes to the Wolverine, it's a really good solo adventure for Wolverine going to Japan. And I think the first and the second act really gets me, and I enjoy it. But I think the most disappointing part for me is when the third act revealed that they didn't properly use Silver Samurai, which is an awesome character that I've read in the comics, because both Wolverine and Silver Samurai are kind of I don't know, arch enemies, I guess, or frenemies sometimes, because Silver Samurai, it really did act, as a hero, in the comics, because he was also part of a big group, which in which that group is adapted into a Disney Pixar movie, which is Big Hero 6. He was along with another X-Men member, which is Sunfire. Yeah, which is another cool character, because I got to play him in the X-Men Legends game, the second X-Men Legends game. So when it comes to the third act of the Wolverine, is I was so disappointed what they did to Silver Samurai. And I guess the whole motivation of the villain is just to take Wolverine's power and make him mortal again, which is that sounds pretty lame, I think, but whatever. But yeah, I think when it comes to Logan, it's a really good epic conclusion. It's kind of like a character study. I kind of wish that they kind of show how Xavier killed the X-Men, which is which is which is kind of a sad thing to watch, because everybody dies. And yet in Logan is a really good conclusion to how you end an X-Men story. yeah, an X-Men story, and how you properly kill off these characters because you are in the future and you are seeing these characters, and you love these characters before, and now you see them. Now you have to see them. You have to see them. Go like goodbye and have a farewell. So I think like Logan, it's a really good like a character study of Wolverine, like in this many years of fighting, and how he first became rebellious, and how he ended up being a part of a family in the Xavier Institute, and now like he has to like say kind of like farewell to the audience. And I kind of teared up, to be honest, when I watched that ending where he said to his daughter, like, don't be what they made you, which is it kind of it's kind of heartbroken to watch, but I cried in the theaters, to be honest. It's a sad ending. So
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
that's to me.
Well, if you think about it, from 2000 up until just a couple of years ago, we had spent so many years and so many movies with Hugh Jackman as Logan, aka Wolverine. And what we got in this movie, as you said, and I think it's right on point, is it's a great character study of someone dealing with survivor's remorse. Because you think about it, he's been alive since roughly the mid to late 1800s, and now it's 2052 or something. I think it is in Logan, somewhere along in there. And him and Xavier are pretty much all that's left. At least they think so, of the original X-Men team. And there have been no more mutants born, at least as far as they know. And then one day, this random young girl shows up and says, well, guess what? Not only are you not alone, you're my dad. Logan has been a loner all his life. He's been an outcast all his life. The only type of semblance of a family he ever had was the X-Men, and unfortunately, because of what happened to Charles, he lost all that. They lost all that. So I will tell you, when I watched the trailers for Logan, I was like, this is going to be hard to sit through. I can already tell, but honestly, I want to go see this because I love this character that much. Not just because of the movies, but because of the comics. All the comics I used to read, the solo comic series that Logan had. And it was indeed powerful, and it was indeed beautiful. And James Mangold deserves all the kudos that he can get and everything for the job he did on Logan. It worked. And, it's a great testament to the comic book genre of film and TV shows that a story like this can be told within that type of universe, and it can feel real, and it can feel lived in, and you can relate to these characters, because I think we all, to certain degrees or whatever circumstances have happened in our lives, we may have dealt with something similar that Logan is dealing with. And like I said, that's survivor's regret. Why am I alive and everyone else around me is dead? Is this the price I pay for being a survivor? Even though we know that he's slowly being killed by the adamantium. He's got, I think what they said, adamantium poisoning or whatever in Logan. And it honestly is an incredible thing to see Hugh Jackman come back one last time. Even if he does a cameo in Deadpool 3, I don't care. If he does, he does. That's fine. It's no big deal to me. But it was great to see him come back one last time and use all his acting skills, and see James Mangold and everybody else that worked on this film create this story and create this movie within this universe that I have been a fan of for decades, literally. And that's why I'm, as both you know, and most everybody that's in the chat knows, I am generally an optimist, but I also try to be a bit pragmatic. But I try to hinge those two things together and say, there is a part of me that tries to say there's a potential that this could end up bad. From everything that I've seen in front of me, I really have to say I trust Kevin Feige and the people working at Marvel Studios to bring this group of characters or these groups of characters into, not necessarily directly into the universe, but introduce them to the universe and introduce them to the audience, so that the general audience who doesn't know about the X-Men will understand maybe in some part why we as the fans love these characters as much as we do. Because as I said early on in the stream when we started talking about X-Men, the one thing they've always been is outcasts. And I think that's where they thrive, is when you tell them in stories where they are seen as the outcast, not necessarily as the bad guy, but definitely as the outcast. That's the one thing I've always appreciated, because I myself have been an outcast the majority of my life, so I can relate to that aspect of the X-Men's characters. So, but I don't want to rattle off too much, guys. So, your thoughts on anything I brought up, or just in general?
I think you said it pretty well. To be honest, it was a perfect ending. It had that emotional weight to it. The build up of being attached to this character is very raw, like the feel of the show or the movie or whatever. I remember sitting in this like, gosh, man, they're going there. I think one of the most epic parts was actually when he was reliving his glory days and took that adrenaline and he just started going full on rage mode. I think that was awesome. He's like, going through the forest or whatever he was. Because throughout the whole movie, he is sick from them. He's sick. He's getting weak. He's not recovering as quick. But yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah. To be honest though, I kind of wish that they, even if Days of Future Past ended perfectly and Logan kind of ended pretty sad, sometimes I wish if Logan ends up that way, they should stop making the other movies like New Mutants or what's that called, Dark Phoenix, a second adaptation. I think it's probably unnecessary to have another Dark Phoenix adaptation. The first one was so disappointing, and the second one was mediocre, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, and I mentioned this before you guys came in, and yeah, I watched Last Stand, and the way they handled the Dark Phoenix element in that movie was just absolutely piss poor. And then I have not watched Dark Phoenix, but when I heard the people that were involved, not the actors as much, but the writer and the director, when I heard that they had been involved with The Last Stand, I was like, nope, I'm not even touching this thing with a 10-foot pole. And me and Geek were talking about this before you two came in and everything. The one thing I want to see them do, but they need to build up to it, they just can't shoehorn it in somewhere, is I want to see the Phoenix Saga. I want to see that story fleshed out over either a miniseries or several movies or whatever. And then if you want to transition into the Dark Phoenix Saga, great, because it is a great storyline. And you know what? Here's the crazy thing. You do those two stories, and you've got the springboard to tell so many other stories, and they can either be within the main continuity of all the X-Men comics that have been published over the last several decades, or it can be something completely and utterly different. And you know what? I would be fine with that too. Like I said, Days of Future Past has been one of my all-time favorite stories within the X-Men universe. And when they did that adaptation back in 2014 or 2015, somewhere along in there, I was thoroughly happy. I walked out of the theater with now Madam Ambassador. At the time, we were just dating, and I was absolutely over the moon how happy I was with how well that movie turned out. It was an adaptation. It wasn't panel for panel, beat for beat, the exact same thing that was in the comic. But it was a relatively faithful adaptation of the story that was told, and it was done in a way that told its own story, had its own moments, had its own beats, and I particularly loved the part where young Charles goes through Logan's memories and into Logan's mind and meets his older self. I love that exchange right there. And it was beautiful. It really was. It was a great moment. So, Marcus, the only problem with that is you have to tell another story before you tell the onslaught narrative. And they're gonna have that takes a lot of world building, a lot of character development, a lot of story arc to even get to that point. You can't just dump a story into a broader narrative and just expect it to fit. Look at what happened with Dark Phoenix. It just didn't fit. It didn't work. You didn't have the buildup of this particular adaptation of Jean Grey portrayed by Sophia Turner. And I liked her in, I think she made her first appearance in
Game of Thrones.
Well, yeah, but she also played Jean Grey in, oh, for heaven's sake.
First Class?
No, she wasn't in First Class, and she wasn't in Dark Phoenix. She was in Apocalypse, I believe. That was
she was in Apocalypse.
That was her first time out as Jean Grey. Now, I liked her in that. She was good in that. She had the right look, the right aesthetic. She played the character well. But we didn't have another movie in between Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix to give us any more time. That's always been part of the problem when they've done these stories with these particular teams. They rush things. You have to set a stage. You have to set the narrative. You have to set the world, and you have to develop the characters. And the only way you can do that is by doing another movie or doing a mini series or something along those lines. You just can't go head first into the Dark Phoenix. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, I'm not saying I'm some sort of expert on how narrative and storytelling is done, but I know comics. I've read them since I was a kid, and I've studied them since then. And I understand how they build a narrative through multiple issues and multiple story arcs and different crossovers and everything. And when you're doing a story that's as big as the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas, and even the Onslaught, that was a massive thing that involved every aspect of the Marvel universe at that time. You just can't plunk all these characters down into this situation and expect it to just run, because people who know this stuff, like myself and like Geek and like you guys, we understand how the comic genre functions. And what they were able to do with phases 1 through 3 of the MCU is they took that principle of, we introduce the character, we give them a first adventure, and then we go from there. And it may be formulaic, but it's how comics have always operated, and it's the same principle of how the MCU phases 1 through 3 and now going into phase 4, it's how it's been done, and it's been successful. Because nobody's going to give a rat's ass about any of these characters if you don't build a relationship between the character and the audience, whether they are a hardcore fan like ourselves or they're the general public, like, say, my mother, who by no means is a comic geek at all, although she is a geek in her own respect and everything, and she is the reason why I'm a geek myself. And no, I don't say that as a derision. I say that proudly. But it's all about competent storytelling. And when you had people like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Jim Lee and Chris Claremont and all these other guys and gals who have worked on these comics for decades on end and who passed on the torch to others who have carried on that thing. It's a simple principle. If you want the audience to be invested, you have to give them a good story, you have to develop the characters, and you have to tell a narrative that people can relate to. And that's why X-Men does have such a large, massive, very passionate fan base. Hi, I'm part of it. And if they're going to bring them into the MCU, they're going to need to do it right. But as I have said before, I will continue to say until he proves me wrong, in Kevin Feige I trust to do this right. So, guys, we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes, but I want you two to have the final word and everything before we do close out, and then we'll... So, fellas, the floor is yours.
Ambassador, I gotta ask you a question. Do you remember like the original idea for X-Men 3 when Bryan Singer was still attached as director?
It has been a very long time, Ferris. I honestly cannot say that I do. No.
Can I at least give you give you like...
Yeah, we got some time. Go ahead, please. Yes, by all means.
So the original screenwriter for X2, Michael Dougherty, he went on an interview like back then in 2009 that the original idea for X3 was to be the resurrection of Jean Grey, and we would get introduced by the Hellfire Club, and we would get Emma Frost, and you know who was gonna play Emma Frost back then? It was Sigourney Weaver. What do you think about that?
Sigourney Weaver is Emma Frost?
Yeah, that was like Bryan Singer's first choice.
Okay, well, let me put it to you this way. Both of you have, I'm assuming, seen early images of Emma Frost when she was first introduced way back for the original Phoenix Saga as a member of the Hellfire Club. Would I be correct in that assertion?
I haven't seen the images of her Emma Frost.
Okay, hang on. Okay, but I'm assuming you saw her in First Class.
Yeah.
Okay. How she's costumed and how she appears in First Class is very, very reminiscent of what she looked like in the comics from that era, from it was the mid 70s or so. Sigourney Weaver dressed like that, even though I don't think necessarily Bryan Singer would have gone with a costuming like that for Sigourney Weaver, and I don't think Sigourney Weaver would have gone along with the costuming like that. I don't know how I would feel about that, to be honest with you. I don't know. I don't think I could see. I don't think I could see Sigourney Weaver as Emma Frost. She doesn't have. I mean, okay, she's not bad looking for her age, but at this point in her, and I'm not trying to sound like an ageist or anything, or trying to sound like mean spirited or anything. But I would want somebody maybe a little bit significantly younger, but not like too young to play Emma Frost. Sigourney Weaver as Emma Frost? No, I can't. I can't see that. That's a little much.
Because like Jean Grey, the actress was actually I think she was in her lower 30s or something, or maybe
Famke Janssen.
Yeah, or mid 30s.
Yeah, somewhere along there. But you know what? It worked. It did. Yeah. It worked and everything. She played the part very well, at least in the first two movies, anyhow.
Yeah. I just want to continue out. I just want to continue out on the original story or the giraffe that was idea by Bryan Singer and his writers Michael Dougherty and Dan Harris. It was supposed to be focused on the resurrection of Jean Grey, and when she became the Phoenix. I don't know if it's Dark Phoenix or just Phoenix, but the Phoenix in that story, she like freed mutant prisoners as she goes on her own path. So basically, like Jean Grey is evolving, evolving with her powers. Not like developing split personality like what they did in X3, which I don't like to be honest. But when it comes to to the Phoenix, she frees mutants, but it it kind of give a disturbance to the Hellfire Club, to the X-Men and the Brotherhood. And three of them, three groups would go on to, a war like fighting over the control of the Phoenix. The X-Men wanted to save Jean, but the Hellfire Club wanted to control the Phoenix, and so does Magneto and his Brotherhood. But at the end, she leaves Earth, and we would also like get a return of a return of characters like Nightcrawler in that story, and Gambit was supposed to be in X-Men 3. And yeah, Gambit was supposed to be in X-Men 3, and the first choice that Bryan Singer wanted to get for Gambit was Keanu Reeves, but Fox wanted other actors, so they auditioned other actors like Channing Tatum, Josh Holloway, who played Sawyer in Lost, then a professional wrestler called the Hurricane, I think, also auditioned, and James Franco even auditioned for Gambit. Like, I don't know who am I supposed to pick, to be honest.
Okay. Of all those actors, I think the only one that would look the part the best and could probably play the character the best, because Gambit's a really cool character. I would have to say, honestly, Reeves would probably have done the best job. Those others, no.
Yeah. Keanu has that kind of attitude, right? The way he carries himself.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, he has this kind of cocky arrogance to him, but he can back it up. Kind of like with when he plays John Wick.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think Keanu Reeves would have been the best pick for that. Those other ones, no.
Channing Tatum, no way. Not saying he's a bad actor, but just not in the part.
No, that's not the right part for him.
He wanted to play the character back then. He wanted to play the character. He auditioned, but he didn't. He didn't get the part. But the character was cut out. But he wanted to do. He wanted to play a character in the Gambit movie. But yeah, that didn't even come to happen after the Fox Disney merger happens. So yeah, I don't know about Channing Tatum as Gambit, but I think like when I watched like the Kingsman sequel, like maybe, but I think like it would have been better if they got someone who can play the part of Remy LeBeau, to be honest.
Now, I will say this much: the guy that they had, Tyler Kirch, I think was his name, who had that cameo as Gambit in X-Men Origins. I think he did a pretty good job for what little bit he was on screen. And I got the vibe of Gambit from him, and I think the way they visualize his powers was good. But I don't think he just didn't get enough screen time in there to really. I mean, he left a decent impression with me, but at the same time, I wanted more, if that makes sense. I would have liked to have him been more incorporated. I maybe would have even liked him to have been a member of the squad that was under Stryker's control. Now, that would have been cool. Anything. I think that would have been a nice dynamic, because if you think about it, if you have both Gambit and Deadpool on the same team, that's an opportunity for some funny banter right there, because, well, with Gambit, his is very dry, whereas Deadpool's is more over the top, but it works. So,
yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
I agree with you on Taylor Kitsch or whatever. I like that actor, actually. I think he was in John Carter or something.
Yes, he was. I actually loved. It was the only movie that I ever got to go. That I was able to talk my biological mother to go to the theater with me to see in theater and everything when we were still talking with one another. But that's neither here nor there. I liked John Carter, and I liked him in it. I thought he was good in it. I thought it was a good movie. I thought it was entertaining. I mean, was it the greatest thing ever? No, but I walked out. I had a good time. So
yes, same.
But Yeah. Well, guys, like I said, we're going to go ahead and wrap up here and everything because we're a little over 3 hours, and I don't want to keep anybody any longer than they want to be. But like I said, I want to give you guys the final word, final thoughts on the topic of the night, and it can either be what if anything, if you want to give a few comments on the latest episode of What If and then X-Men, and then we'll call it tonight. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Because I got a baby girl to take care of. So overall, X-Men will always be my number one team, and yeah, no offense to Avengers. So I hope like when they do when they make a debut, when the X-Men make a debut in the MCU, I just hope that they just don't cram them over too much with the whole Avengers, because that world is their world. But when it comes to the X-Men, I hope they focus more on their world, and and so like I hope they give like equal screen time to every character, and so that we could all get into their characters, and I hope they properly done it right. I mean, that's basically to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I know there's a lot of pushback or whatever, kind of in our like fandom sphere on the Eternals, or whatever, about like, essentially not like the mainstream person is going to know what the Eternals are, but to argue, we had Guardians of the Galaxy, and that was like a smash hit. I didn't know who they were, to be honest. I had to Google and do all this stuff, and I absolutely loved it. And so I think Eternals is going to be like the new Guardians, pretty much. It's going to blow our minds off, and everyone's going to be like, oh, I knew it was going to be good, right? But yeah. So, but no, Marvel, I trust in their process. So I look forward to see what they bring us. That's it.
As do I. Well, my final thoughts, I have been and always will be a Marvel fan, but my biggest part of the Marvel universe I will always love is the X-Men. And I enjoyed this stream tonight, guys. I hope you all had a good time yourself. Geek, if you see this, I hope you enjoyed yourself as well. And I'll definitely be doing more of these editorials. I've been enjoying them and everything. I may back them off to once a month and everything, and just pick one topic instead of doing like multiples of them. But yeah, in terms of What If, the first two episodes, they have been very top notch. I've really enjoyed them across the board. And as far as the Eternals, my reaction, this trailer really gave me a sense of, okay, this is the story they're going with. This is the story they're going to tell. And I am enthusiastic. I've been enthusiastic ever since they announced that the Eternals were going to be getting their own movie. Would I love to see it maybe branch off into maybe a miniseries on Disney Plus? Yeah, I wouldn't mind if they did that and everything. And considering the quality of the shows that they have done, the limited run shows that they have done for the MCU Phase 4 thus far, I don't see why a Eternals mini series or something, maybe something about their origin, would be unwelcome by the fan base. Hi. So, but anyways, folks, I want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight. I hope you all enjoyed the stream. Of course, as always, make sure you smash that like button and share this out with all your Marvel and X-Men fans out there. And do want to let y'all know I'll be back next week, Friday with the Council of Ones, as we continue our review of Babylon 5 Season 4 with the episode Epiphany. And then I will be doing a very special stream next weekend for Madam Ambassador in celebration of her birthday. Be doing another director spotlight for one of her all-time favorite directors and one of mine as well, the one and only Mr. James Cameron. So, but that all being said, folks, make sure you go check out these two fellows, check out their channels, check out Tim's TikTok. He does a lot of good stuff over there, and makes you laugh, makes you smile, and same with Ferris and everything. He does a lot of good stuff on his channel. I know he's busy, same as a lot of us are, but they are worth your time. And the same goes for Grandpa Geek, who was in here earlier. So, but that all being said, folks, you have a great night wherever you're at. And until next time, these are the Ambassadors, signing off.